Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome to your Android programming tutorial series. So what is Android? Well, it is the operating system that powers the Android phones. So if you want to develop apps for this is the series for you. Now you might be an iPhone user and you might prefer that, but as a developer you often need to know how to develop for both, because a company usually wants their application on Android and on the Apple Store. So that's my goal here. I'm going to try to teach you how to develop an Android in this series, and then later on we're going to be teaching you how to develop on Apple in a future series. So please be sure to subscribe if you're looking forward to that. Now if you're new and you don't really know how my videos work, let me explain. I keep it real simple. Concepts. Then I go on the computer, code. Real simple. You don't have to know anything because this is a beginner series, but I also will be teaching some Java stuff. So if you're new to Java and we're going a little fast, I have another Java series if you just want to dedicate yourself to that and focus on that. Because Android development is basically taking that Java programming and applying it to building an app for a phone. So you kind of have to learn two things here, Java and app development. So it might be a lot, but you can commit. And you need to commit because, just a little stat for you guys, based on my analytics, my average watch time, people usually make it about 3 minutes and 30 seconds into a video before they drop off. And then from video 1 to video 2, the drop off is tremendous. So most people fail. So if you make it to video 2, you're already doing better than the majority of the people watching this episode. So that's not to encourage you to only get to episode 2. I would like to see you guys work all the way through because we're going to take you from knowing absolutely nothing to knowing how to build basic Android applications. Again, this is a beginner series, so we're not going to be building some crazy complex stuff, but I'm going to try to go a little bit farther than what most people would cover in a beginner series, and I'm going to try to go at a depth that is more satisfying. So I'm really excited. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be going over some of the Android principles that you need to know and some of the Java principles. We'll install everything we need, and then we'll start developing basic applications and learning the principles behind that. Now, do you have to have an Android device? Look, I'm borrowing this from a friend. I don't own this. I don't own an Android device myself, and I'm still able to do this series. And that's made possible thanks to what are known as emulators. So this is basically like, imagine having this on your computer and you can click the buttons and it's almost like a real device. Now before you go deploying applications to the application store or the Google store or whatever you want to call it, you probably want to test it out on some real devices. So borrow some from some friends and be like, hey, come check out my app, try it out on there, and I'll be showing you guys how to do that as well. So hopefully, after this series and the upcoming series, you can have an application on the Play Store and on the Apple Store and on every other app store there is on the market. So thank you guys for watching. And one last thing, this is Java. Another language you might hear is Kotlin. This is an alternative available for you to develop in Android applications. We're going to start with Java, but my intention is also to cover Kotlin in another upcoming series. So I think this is a great place to start, and then picking up Kotlin is going to be real easy. So thank you guys, and also no sponsors for this series, so I know you guys have been complaining about that, and I listened. More like no one wanted to pay me money. So sponsor free, so if you want to help out, please be sure to check out my Patreon account and start supporting this channel. Thank you guys, and I don't feel like editing, so I'm just gonna turn the camera off right here. Dang it, that didn't work. Hey, welcome back to episode 2 in your Android development series. I wanted to share with you guys some basic concepts of app development. So we're going to try and kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture. So we start with what we said earlier, if I can find it, Android. This is one specific device. But oftentimes as a developer, you'll want to create an application for numerous to Android and Apple. So in this situation, how can you do this if Java, the language we're using, only develops applications for this? Well, here's a couple of options. Let's draw some stuff out. So we have Android. And for us, we're going to be using Java. You can also use Kotlin. So these are your options for Android, but we're going to stick with Java. And then we also have Apple, or I guess let's just say iOS. It's probably the better use. And for this, we could use Swift. You can also use Objective-C, but Swift is probably what's recommended. All right, so when we are learning Java and developing Android apps, we're really only covering like 50% of the picture. Even though Android is the more popular operating system, oftentimes companies will want to get their applications on iOS, even so more than Android sometimes. So you have to basically adapt to be able to create apps for both. So here's how you can do that best. One, you can learn Java, learn the principles of app development, and then do that again for Swift. And when you're doing this, you can follow different design patterns that if you're creating an application that you want to be on both Android devices and iPhone devices or Apple devices, then you can design it in such a way that you can share certain components. Now, this doesn't always work, but it can. So for example, instead of having two completely separate applications, you could have two smaller applications that share one backend that feeds both of these applications. That's one way you can do it. So for example, if you're using an application, like let's say you go on Instagram, this might be Instagram's servers. And then you just kind of have like a viewer on Android and a viewer on iOS. So you can basically only code a little bit for Android and a little bit for iOS, and then code the stuff that's common between the two in some other language or whatever it might be. So for example, you could do this in Node.js, or you could do it in Java, or whatever you decide. That doesn't really matter because there's a separation here. You can think of it as two different components. Separation of concerns is what that's called. It's a long word. So basically, if you implement things to allow for separation of concerns, you can develop the Android application in isolation, and you can develop the backend in isolation, and then all you gotta do is communicate between the two. Same for the iOS app. You can develop that as its own thing and communicate to that backend. So that is one way of doing it, and now I need to get my eraser. I'm trying to reduce my editing because I find that I hate editing, and it makes me want to not make videos. So if I stop editing, then I make more videos, everyone's happy. Another option is to use a tool that allows to develop one code base that will then transpile to be native apps. So for example, an option is Flutter. Another option is React Native. And what these will do, this will allow you to code one thing, and then this gets deployed to iOS and Android. So we'll say Android's on this side. We'll go to Android and iOS. So in the example of Flutter, you can use the Dart programming language. In the example of React Native, you can use JavaScript using React. So if you want to develop your application in JavaScript and then just have it magically work on Android and magically work on iOS without having to know Swift or Java, that is how you can do that. Same thing for Flutter. You can code one code base. Another popular one is Xamarin if you know C#. So the thing that's special about these is that the end result is a native application. When someone says native, what they mean is that it's not like a web app that looks like an application, but it's really not. It's native. It is as if you programmed it directly on Android and directly on iOS. So there's no issues for speed or anything like that. Now a third option, so if you're not going to do Java and Swift, and you're not going to do this, a third option is to do a web app. So with a web app, you can build a website that looks and performs just like an app. So you can use it on your mobile devices just the same by going in the browser, visiting that web page, and it works fine. Or you could even create a shortcut to that website on the phone's homepage. So, sorry, I don't know how to use these. So you can make a shortcut button on here that when you click it, it opens up to that web app and it works just fine. So that's a third option. And there are some other options out there, like reactive applications. This is another thing you can look into. There's all kinds of different application options, and there's so many different ways to do it. So what am I trying to get at? 7 minutes into this rambling session, I hope you have just a better view of the different options that are available to us. Which one should you choose? I think it doesn't matter unless your boss tells you to do this one. I think the best idea is to just pick one, start with it, and get better at it. Because, for example, once we learn how to do Java and Android, picking up the other ones is going to be a whole lot easier because we're already going to understand the different components of the Android applications, and that's going to be very similar if you switch to something like Flutter or React Native. You're going to still have to worry about those components. They might just have little different names, a little different way of working with them, but your overall app development skills are going to be a lot better. So that's where we're starting. I have grown to prefer just doing it natively. I personally feel like there's a little bit less risk. Now, a lot of people have developed with tools such as Xamarin and React Native, and it works fine. But I think there is a little bit more risk because now you're relying on a system that is external to Apple or Android, and you have to abide by what they allow, which means maybe you don't get the latest, greatest features that are available on new operating system releases. Or maybe there's some bugs in their software that makes it hard to create a certain app. So there's different issues that arise, and although it's ideal to think in a perfect world, you know, we create one code base and it magically just works on Android and iOS, but that's not always reality. You can have issues that arise that might not arise if you're developing natively on iOS or Android. So that's why I think personally it's probably best to just start developing natively yourself on a mobile device, in this case Android, using Java or Kotlin, and if you're on iOS, using Swift. So that's where we're starting. Hopefully that makes sense with you guys. And if you have any questions or concerns about which direction you should go, I would like to start some discussion in the comment section of this video. Let's hear what experience you've had with these different ways of creating applications and which ones have worked best for you or which ones you would advise against, because different people are going to have different experiences, and some people are going to love a tool such as React Native and other people are going to absolutely hate it. So let's hear some of your stories if you've done any app development in the past, or as you're going through this series, maybe you try one and it's not what you're hoping for, then come back to this video and leave a comment in that comment section below. And the only other request I have is to subscribe to help this channel. You know, I got to be that #1 coding channel, so I got quite a bit of a ways to go. And also consider supporting me on Patreon, and thank you. Peace out. Wow, you guys made it to episode 3, which is actually impressive after that rather scatterbrained episode number 2. So thank you guys for sticking along this far. I think you guys are doing well, and pretty soon we're going to get hands-on, but there's a couple more concept things I want to cover just so we can kind of set that foundation so when we start coding things, everything makes good quality sense. All right, so a couple things. when we're working with an Android device, there's a couple of terms or vocabulary that you should know. So you have a bunch of application options. So each one of these is an app, and each page on this application is known as an activity. So when you open an application, you have the main activity. And this is interesting. I like that they used this word. So the main activity. So if you watched my Java programming series or you have some history of programming experience, you might know that oftentimes for programming languages, the application will start in what's known as the main function or the main method. So main is a common thing in software development. Whenever you see main, think of it as the start. So in other words, the main activity is kind of like your home page for your app. Then on that home page, you can have different buttons that will actually open up a new activity. So you can basically think of an application as a series of pages, and you can display different pages depending on what you want to do. Now, a key thing with these applications is that you can open the application to a specific activity based on how the application was opened. So for example, you might send the person's phone a notification and say, hey, Sally commented on your photo. And then they click that, and it doesn't go to the main activity. Instead, it goes to the activity for that photo. So it can change which activity is opened to based on how you open the application. You can also have it be open from other applications, which will allow you to go from one app to another to a specific activity. So that's one really cool capability of these applications. Now another thing is that there is a level of dynamicness that is made possible when you're developing Android applications. So, for example, you might have an Android device that is this big, and I might have an Android device that's bigger. And you can, I'm having the bad habit of, I'm looking at the screen here instead of, all right, I gotta look at the, okay. So you could have one that's bigger, and you can make the app dynamically resize to fit the larger phone. Also, different phones are going to have different hardware capabilities or different features based on what model of phone they are or which manufacturer. Android is really challenging in understanding all this because so many different phones have Android. It's not like Apple where you just have the Apple phones that has iOS, so all you have to worry about is the iPhone, the different years or the models of the iPhone, and then the iPad, and then that's it. Instead, you have to worry about all the different phones that have Android, which there are tons of them. So all different sizes and all different capabilities. So you need to be able to create applications that are dynamic that are going to work on all of these devices. So a couple ways you can do this is one, design your user interfaces to be dynamic so that that way they work on these different sizes of devices. And test it out. You can get emulators for all the different devices you're going to need to create for. Check them, make sure everything looks good, play with them, and so forth. The other thing is that you can check different hardware capabilities. So for example, the app might require the access to the camera. And if for some reason a phone doesn't have the hardware camera, then you can make it so that the app cannot be downloaded. These are the kinds of capabilities that are made possible. You can basically check the hardware capabilities, and you can either make it so that they can't use the app if they don't have it, or you can disable a particular feature. You know, maybe the camera is optional, and since they don't have one, we'll just turn that feature off and we'll just not use the camera. So I guess it depends on what specifics you need, what you want to do, but that's the kind of stuff we're going to get into. Now there's one last keyword I want to teach you guys, and we're going to get into this in a dedicated video. But when I first started, this is a word that tripped me up so many times, and I want you guys to just see it so it's in the front of your brain, or at least in the back of your brain, deep back in there, like back with like the math you learned in school. put this word there at least, but hopefully it's up front because you're going to see it again. And basically, I want you to think of an intent as a way to do various different things inside of Android development. So we're going to get into all the different things it can do, but for now, just know that this word exists, and I'm going to give you one example of something you can do with an intent. Let's say you have an activity, such as the main activity, and then you have another activity that is opened when you click this button. So you click the button, and a new page is opened with all new different options and buttons and so forth. Well, you can basically transfer data from this activity to this activity using an intent. So it's a way you can transfer data between activities. So that's one of the things an intent can be used for, but there are a lot of different other things. So the easiest way to learn this is through examples. So we'll be going over lots of examples. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. We talked about 3 things: activities, including the main activity. We talked about the dynamicness of Android development, and we talked a little bit on intents, just to get that in your brain, because we're going to be seeing that, and I don't want it to be brand new, fresh when you first see it and start using it. I want you to have a little bit of knowledge. So if you want a little bit of extra research practice, look up intents in Android, read upon them, see what they can do, and you'll realize that they're quite versatile, and you'll probably be using them a lot. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. The only thing is, in order to view number 4, you have to subscribe to the channel. It's the new rules on YouTube. That's how it works. I'm just playing. But I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and help this channel grow. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Also consider supporting me on Patreon. Peace out, and check out the next episode where I'm going to give you some more highly useful and entertaining information. And pretty soon we're going to be making, like, I don't know, probably the next Flappy Bird. We're going to be like big shots. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome everybody. In this episode, we are going to be getting the tools needed to start Android development. So specifically, we're going to be downloading Android Studio. Now, Android Studio is an example of an IDE, and an IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. And here are some other examples of IDE. You may have heard of some of these: Visual Studio, Eclipse, Xcode. Essentially, it's a glorified text editor. So instead of doing everything inside of Notepad++, we can get a little bit more capabilities and features that are built around whatever software we're building. So in the situation of Android, this IDE is going to give us access to emulators for different cell phones. It's going to do some, syntax highlighting and all of that good stuff for us. So it's just a little bit cleaner than using a very simple text editor. So it's going to have all of the compiling capabilities and everything built into it. So let's go ahead and get that. Now, I did originally have all this stuff installed on my machine, but I tried to delete everything just to go through the whole process, but it might be just slightly different than you guys, but you should be able to figure it out just with a little bit of effort and research. And yeah, so make sure you read all this good stuff here, nice and juicy. Download that, and that should start downloading. And while this downloads, I'm just going to take a minute to just complain a little bit and give you guys some advice. So when you are building apps, try your best not to create a new release of an application that's actually worse than the previous. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I actually record all of my videos with this tool called QuickTime, and that's actually what this little square or circle logo is here, the circle with the square inside of it. That's to say it's recording. And they just came out with this new edition, and it's just not good, because for one, it doesn't indicate when it actually starts recording, because there's like this 3-second delay. So I just kind of have to guess when it actually started. So it might actually cut off a little bit of my words, or it might actually have like a second or two of me just like breathing really heavily, which I don't want either one of those. But there's no real easy way to change that. As well as it used to have microphone levels, so I could check how loud my microphone was by speaking into it, and I'd see it go up to the red and see if it was good or not. But now that's gone as well. So here's an example of what not to do. Don't create a really good application that's free for use and then make it terrible and useless. I mean, it still works, but if you guys have any other recommendations for screen recorders, I have used Camtasia before, but it's just a little it's a little big for my needs. I just want something real simple. I can just record and I can immediately take it and upload it to the internet. And as you can see, my battery is low. So this looks like it's just about finished. Yeah, perfect timing. So let's open that up. And sorry to complain, guys. I just wanted to get that off my chest because, I don't know, it's annoying for consumers after using an app for so long that they make key changes that destroy some of the most valuable pieces of the software. And it seems like developers do that all the time. Like, I don't know why developers think it's a good idea to make software worse, or if they just don't understand how users work. But yeah, take this. I'm on Mac. If you're on Windows, it's going to be a little bit different, but it shouldn't be too bad. Just go through the process of installing it, and that'll go into your applications. And if you have the option to do like a desktop shortcut or whatever, go ahead and do that. On Mac, that's going to appear in the applications folder, so you can double click that, or you can hit the F4 key and see all of my applications. Go in here and click Android Studio. And hopefully I can finish on time. My battery is getting a little low. So we'll minimize these and we'll just have Android Studio open. Yes, we want to open it. I trust the developers here. And just give it like an hour or two. You know how it is. All right, so it's going to pop open, and this should guide us. This should have everything we need to create applications. We might need to go download what's known as the JDK, the Java Development Kit. I'm not sure if Android Studio comes with that already, or if that's something you need to go download separate. But if we start creating applications and they work, then I know we're good because I actually uninstalled the JDK right before starting this video. So if for some reason you're trying to run your applications and there's something's not working, it's just saying like, hey, it doesn't have the capabilities to run this or something, then go download the JDK. All right, so when you get here, you should create a new Android Studio project. And you have a bunch of different options in here, and we'll just go with an empty activity. Now, as a refresher from the previous episode, an activity is the equivalent to a page. So we're just going to have an empty page on here. We'll click Next and give it a name of my application. For the language, we're going to go with Java, but again, you can also look into Kotlin if that's something you're interested in. And yeah, that looks good. We'll just click Finish. And this should give us everything to basically have an application that doesn't actually do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this full screen and ignore the low battery thing because I'm going to try and finish this up real quick. And if my battery dies, I'm sorry, guys. Now, when you run the application, you'll go up to the top here, and you'll see there's no real play button. There is a play button right here, but it's darkened out. You can't click that. And that's because you need a way to run this application. It doesn't just run like it would if you were programming in Java in a console. You need either an emulator to act as a mobile phone, or you need a mobile phone, a physical mobile phone to plug into your computer. And that's what we're going to be talking about next. So as I let all this stuff spin and synchronize, I'm going to stop the recording, and in the next episode, we're going to be talking about how to actually take our application and run it. So thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. And if you're interested, check out my Patreon account. Thanks. Peace out. Welcome back. In this episode, we are going to learn how to work with the Android virtual device thing. So basically, when you load Android Studio, it's going to look something like this. We got a whole bunch of junk going on, and we're going to clean all that up. But the one thing you'll notice is, watch this. All right, first, if you click this little arrow, that's what I'm talking about. AVD, Android Virtual Device Manager. That's what we're going to be talking about. But first of all, we're just going to click this little play button. We got our app started, and it says error running app, no target device found. You can see that down in the bottom. So what in the world does that mean? It means we need to select a device to run this application on. So we can't just run it on our computer like you would if you're in Eclipse programming Java. You just run it and it runs in the console. Boom, everyone's happy. It doesn't quite work that way with Android Studio. You actually have to have a location. So you go to select a device, and look, there's nothing on here except Open AVD Manager. So that's what we're going to start with. All right, so on here, this is where you manage all of your virtual devices. So by virtual devices, it means they're not physical devices. It just looks like you have the smartphone or the watch or whatever it might be on your computer, and you can click around using your touchpad or mouse or whatever you're using. So let's create a virtual device, and you get a whole bunch of different phone options pop up here. So you can see here are the Pixel phones. We have some of the Nexus, yada, yada, yada. I'm not really a huge Android user. I know Java. Obviously, I know a little bit about Android development, but my day-to-day use phone, at least of right now, is an Apple phone. So I don't know all the differences between all of these, but hopefully that's something we can explore as this series goes on if we need to explore different options on here. So we're going to start with the Pixel phones, and we're going to go with, let's go with Pixel 3a. That looks fun. And then you click Next and select a system image. All right, so these system images, well, these are basically the different editions of the Android operating system. So you can select one on here, and you can see over on the right what Android version it's talking about. So they just have little code names. So Q, that's the latest one, at least for me. That is 10.0. Now, you can also see the API level distribution chart. You can also find it if you X out of this. There's a little link down here at the bottom. And this is going to oh, actually, it doesn't even open up a new web page. It just shows it all right here. That's kind of cool. So it's going to show which editions are the most popular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of this. And I'm also going to close out of this for a second because I want to show you this web page. If you click this, you can see this distribution dashboard where you can get a little bit more info about the different distributions. And if you just want a little bit more information, you can use that web page as well. So I'm going to X out of that, and we're going to go back to creating this, and we're going to go with Pixel 3a and click Next, and then we're going to go with Q, which is the the Android version 10, and then we're going to click Download. Now, of course, you can create the application and you can test it out on these different versions. So if you wanted to make sure your application worked on as many things as possible, you could go down here and try downloading all of these different editions, and then you could test run your application on all of them. Just be warned, as you download all these different phones and all these different editions, you're going to fill up a lot of space on your hard drive, so you might need to keep that in consideration. Hopefully you have enough storage. I'm on a 256 gigabyte laptop, so I probably can't go download every single one of these. So I'm just going to stick with one for now, and then we'll explore from there. All right, it looks like this is done. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Finish. Then we'll hit Next. And then we can give this a name. That looks like a pretty good name. I think I'll name my first child that, Pixel 3a API 29. You can choose the startup orientation, a bunch of other stuff. We'll just hit Finish. All right, there we go. So we have our device. It works exactly like a smartphone. It's really cool. Honestly, I got into this kind of development long before I had a smartphone, so it was actually kind of cool for me. So you can watch this start up as if it's a normal phone. And you can see there's all kinds of different button capabilities. So since you don't have physical buttons, it looks like some of them are over here. So you can increase the volume or decrease it. You can tilt the phone for different rotation capabilities. You can take a screenshot, zoom, and then go back, home, and overview, and more. So lots of different capabilities there. And it might be a little slow. That's because you're running basically a system inside of a system, and I'm recording the whole process. So it's going to be a little bit slow for me. Hopefully it's a little faster for you. It just depends on what kind of machine you got and how beefy it is. I'm on the base model 13-inch MacBook Pro from 2015, I think. So it's been a couple years, about 5 years. So wow, my goodness, about time it started up. So we launch this from the little play button here, which isn't going to automatically launch our app. If you want to do that, which it's not going to take nearly as long, you can X out of your virtual devices and you can hit the play button right there. And this is going to build, and then it will show up over here on your device. My computer literally sounds like it's going to explode, so sorry about that. Alright, it looks like it loaded, and you can see it says Hello World. So we didn't even have to type it out, it just did a Hello World for us. So we got our first application. You can go show it off, probably get a job as a senior software engineer, Android development, whatever it is, you got this to show them. But you're probably not going to get very far if you don't know how to run this on an actual Android device. So that's what we're going to be talking about next, so please be sure to smack that subscribe button and check out the next episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, I want to show you how to... You be quiet. We're going to be doing USB debugging with an Android device. In other words, how can we create an app? On there, we did that Hello World app in an earlier episode. How can we get this running on an actual Android device? Now, we're not going to be deploying to the Google Play Store and then downloading it. That you could do later on once the app is launched. Instead, we're going to be using it on this in development mode. So Androids are kind of weird because they have like these secret settings that you can enable. So, pardon me, I'm not like super great with Android, but open your phone and then go to apps. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into settings. Can you guys see all this? Probably. Go to system. So if you're on like one of these, scroll over, go to system, and then go to about device. And there's one on here, build number. Double click that a bunch of times, and not double, like 7-time click. And that's going to turn on development mode. So then what you do is you click the back arrow, and now you should have this developer options under system. You can click that, and USB debugging, turn that on. Oh, you have to turn the whole thing on if it's off. All right, so turn that on, and then USB debugging on. So it can be used to copy data between your computer and your device. Blah, 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 blah. All right, awesome. So that is step one. Next thing you need to do is you need to take this and you need to plug it in to your computer. Just so you know, with developer options, it gives you all kinds of different settings that you can configure and tinker with. So go through on your phone and look through some of this, because it kind of gives you some really cool capabilities with your phone that you normally never otherwise wouldn't have. Probably didn't even know it was there. When I first did this, I was like, what is going on? How could you just do that? So it's kind of weird that they just have that hidden in there. It's kind of cool though, because not everyone needs to go in there and enable development mode, because it probably just leads people to breaking their phone or causing issues, so you don't just want to do it for everybody. So next thing, get a USB cable to your computer, plug it into this. If you're on Windows, meaning you're developing on Windows, you might need to install drivers, and there's guides for that. So I'm on the superior operating system. Start debate in the comments below. I'm using Mac, so I don't actually really have to do anything. I just plug this in and it works. So that's what I'm gonna do. And if you guys are on Windows, you can try it. If it doesn't work, go into your system settings or whatever and look for the drivers. I haven't used a Windows computer in forever, so, well, I guess a couple years ago. But anywho, my point is, plug this in and we'll get started. So that's what we're going to do in the next episode. We're going to take our Hello World application and we are going to run it on an Android device. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you then. Welcome back. This episode, we are going to take our application that we've created, our little Hello World application, and we are going to take it and run it on an actual physical Android device. Now, you can't actually see the device, but if you watched the previous episode, you would know that I have an Android device, and I'm going to plug it in to the USB cable thingamajig, and we're going to see what happens. Now, this here is an emulator. That's going to work for the majority of our development, but as we get closer to release, you want to test it out on physical devices. So, also, the emulator allows you to try on more devices, so you don't have to go buy tons and tons of different cell phones with different versions and different sizes and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over into Android Studio, and what we're going to do is click the drop down here, and you can see it says Pixel 3a, which I taught you how to install in the episode before the previous episode. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plug in my phone. So I plug in my phone, it does a little buzz thingy majig, and it said unknown device for a second, and then it popped up with Samsung, some other junk. So that is the device that we're going to run on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Run App. Alright, so we went to the build, so you can see the process here. It takes forever. And then it popped up on my phone and it says Hello World. So that's all you have to do to run this on Mac on the computer and Android on the device. If you're on Windows, you might have to do a little bit of extra work. You can see this is a guide on installing USB drivers. So you might need to go to Computer Management and then Device Manager and do all this other stuff. If for some reason it's not working, you might need to do this process here and make sure you follow the appropriate operating system, probably Windows 10, but just in case you're on Windows 8 or Windows 7, you might need to do it a little bit differently. All right, so that is how you develop and try it out on your device. It works exactly the same way as this emulator, but it's on a physical phone, so it's a little bit more realistic. Thank you guys. Be sure to subscribe and check out the next video because we're going to start building out some applications, or at least learning some good concepts. Hey, what is going on everybody? Welcome. In this episode, we're going to be covering a bunch of different things about Android development. So if you're just jumping into the series, this might be a good place to start because we're going to start building apps. Now, if you're brand new, I'd actually encourage you to start this series from the beginning because we cover some essential foundational concepts that's going to set that foundation for success. But if you're just jumping in, you want to go from here, by all means, go for it. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. But basically, what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to talk some about the layout, a little bit with working with Android Studio, and we're going to talk about the basics of the setup for an Android application. So pay attention. You don't want to slack off yet. So what we're going to do first off is if your screen looks a little bit different than mine, maybe you have some stuff open or whatever it might be, what you can do is you can go to Window, Restore Default Layout. So anytime you mess up your layout, you can click that to get back to the default. The next thing is when you open some code, so if you go over to Project and you open up one of these files, let me just open one, it doesn't really matter. You'll notice the text is really small in here. And you might try holding Command or Control and hitting the plus key like some other editors allow you to do, and it doesn't work. But what I can do is I can hold Command and I can scroll in with 2 fingers, or if you're on Windows, you could just use like the scroll on the mouse or on the trackpad, and that should work the same way. But if you're trying that and it's not working, let me show you how to make that work. What we're going to do is we're going to go up to Android Studio and go to Preferences. If you're on Windows, it's probably somewhere similar. And then what we're going to do is go to Editor, General, and there's this one here you can check which says Change Font Size with Command plus Mouse Wheel. So make sure that's checked and hit OK. Now you should be able to scroll in so you can see it nice and easy. Beautiful. Now the next thing I want to talk about in this episode are some of the key files. So if we just X out of this and take a look at our project over here on the left, close everything, and just open up App. Now in here you're going to see a lot of different files. You can see one that says Java and then another one that says Java with a generated in parentheses. The one we're interested in is the Java without the parentheses that says generated. So we're going to open this one, and we're going to open that first folder, My Application, by clicking the triangle to expand it, and we're going to open the main activity. Now, if you remember from an earlier episode, the activities act as the different pages of your application. So the code might look something like this. Your code should be pretty much the same. It should be exactly the same, honestly. So this is what code we have so far. When the application runs, this is where it starts. It starts on line 11. Now, there's another important file you should know about, and that is if you open up the res folder and then layout and then activity_main.xml. So this is the structure of your application. So there's two pieces for this activity. There's the code for the activity, and then there is the layout for the activity. Now, when you're on this page, this is going to be where you do your visual editing, but if you want to build functionality, you're going to be doing that inside of the Java file, the .java. So get your file extensions figured out. You can see mainactivity.java, that's for code. Activity_main.xml, that is for structure. XML defines the layout, Java defines the functionality. So for example, this here is an example of a method, and it defines what happens when the first activity is created. Sorry guys, I'm back, I just threw up. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the .java file is the code for the application, or the activity, and the .xml is the structure. So get your file extensions figured out and understand where to find them. And that is the basis, because when we go and add new activities, you'll know where to put them and which files go where and where everything happens. So thank you guys for watching. In the next episode, we are going to be talking about something new. So be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back everybody. This episode we're going to be talking about the layout editor, and that is what you're looking at right here. So if you want to figure out how to find this piece, you need to open an XML file. So inside of our project over here on the left, you can expand app and then go into res and then layout and then open activity_main.xml. Now this is an XML file. Now if you've ever seen XML before, it's a markup language, and you're probably thinking it doesn't look like this. This looks like a user interface. Well, what this layout editor does is it actually will show us the visual of what the XML will look like. So if you want to see what the actual XML is, there's this little button down here at the bottom that says text. So this is what XML actually looks like. And yeah, it's kind of ugly. I don't really like XML, but it serves its purpose. It's basically a way to structurally lay out an application. And this is the default XML. And as we modify our activity or our page, this XML will be updated with new content. So you can see in here, one of the items in here is this text view. And that actually refers to this hello world little text section right here. So inside of our activity, you can go back by clicking design. Inside of our activity, you can take this, you can drag it around, and you can change different attributes of this thing over here on the right, and that is all going to be represented inside of the XML. So if I can give you a little bit more space, you can see it has this 464 here. If we go back to the design, drag it around a little bit maybe, go back to the text, and you can see that changes, as well as this one here as well. So the position of the text is put inside of the XML, and we just get this nice visual of what it looks like. And as we change this, you can see different things appear on the text view XML. And you can see if we get it perfectly in the middle, you can see one of the things disappears. So if we pull it off to the side, you can see the horizontal bias is there, but if we put it right in the middle, it goes away. So the default is right in the middle there. So if we want to get rid of the vertical, we can put that right in the middle as well. Maybe if I can get it. There we go. Perfect. So you can see if we get it right in the middle, those go away because they default to putting it right in the middle. So that's a little bit on how the XML works. But now let's take a little bit more at some of the other pieces of this. So at the top, we have this toolbar, and you can see we have two sections. We have this blue section and this white section. You can change that by clicking this button right here, and this is known as the design surface. So you can select this, and you can choose design, you can choose blueprint, or you can choose both of them. So I recommend to go with both of them, but if you prefer one over the other, or you have a small screen and you just want to focus on one of them, you can select that there. The other things you can do is you can change the orientation of your phone. So what it looks like, whether it's wide or tall, portrait or landscape. You can change the phone to view it on, so we could go to the Pixel 3a if we want to see the shape of the same as the emulator we downloaded. And yeah, those are the key things that you should know about on here. Other than that, you can see over here we have this palette. This allows us to take things, different components, and put them on our page so we can add buttons, for example. And we also have this component tree which describes the structure. And then we have attributes on the right which allow us to change things about the component we're working with. So these components are actually called views. And we're going to talk about that more in detail in the next video. But for now, just know that each one of these components we put on the screen is known as a view. So that is the introduction to the layout. And if you want more information, there is some good documentation. Here's an introduction to the layout editor. You can see all of the different pieces and where they are. And I'm sure you can read this if you want, or you can just continue in the series because we're going to be going over all of this information. So hopefully that was helpful just as a basics to get you started. The main thing you need to know is that these things are called views. Each of the views have attributes or things to describe them. We can configure those there, and all of these configurations are actually stored in text in an XML format, and you can see that by clicking the text tab down at the bottom. So hopefully that gets you started. Thank you guys for watching. In the next episode, we're going to go in a little bit more detail with these views and as well as layouts. So be sure to check that out, and I'll see you then. Hey, welcome everybody. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about views as well as layouts. So these are two types of components that you need to know about in Android development. So if you look down here on the left, you can see this component tree. And you can see there's two things in this default application. We have this constraint layout, and then we have this text view. So these are named nicely because you can see which one's a layout and which one is a view. The layouts act as a box to put views inside. And the views are just different components that we can use inside of our application, such as a text thing, or we can go in here, we could add a button. There's all kinds of different things that we can put in this application, and you can see that they're all nested inside of this layout. So again, just to repeat myself, the layout acts as a box to contain these views. So numerous views go inside of the layout, and you can visually see that because the text and the button are indented just a little bit after the constraint layout. So if you want to see another example of this, let's get rid of that button just so we go back to how we had it. And in the palette, you can click these different tabs on the left. Let's go to layouts and add the top one, constraint layout, drop that on the screen. And now we'll go into buttons and we will just add a button. And you can see that this constraint layout is inside of this other layout, and this button is inside of this constraint layout. So you can collapse it using the little triangle there, the little arrow, and you can see that the button is inside. So what that means is when we take this constraint and we drag it around, you can see that the button is moved with it. It's tied to it. So consider it, the button is inside the box, and now we're moving the box, and all of the stuff inside moves with it. Now, as we go on in this series, we're going to learn more about the different components. For example, what these different layouts are and what the different buttons and text types. We're going to learn what all that stuff is, so don't worry about that all right now. The main thing you need to understand is how the different components work and the difference between a view and a layout. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on is that you can see we have these two different views. We have the design and the blueprint. I never really talked about what the difference is, so I just wanted to give just an example that will show the difference. You can consider the blueprint as more of the structure, and you can consider the design as, well, the design, what it's going to show up as. So here's a little example. If we go and we put a button on the screen, and by the way, you can just delete it by hitting the delete key. And let's say we go on here and we say visibility, and we set this to invisible. Well, check this out. You can see it on the blueprint, but you can't see it on the design. So the blueprint shows it and the design does not. So that's why I like having both, because then you can see everything that's going on. But it's nice because you know it's there on the blueprint, but visually you can see that it's not going to appear. So that is the benefit of using these two at the same time, so you can see both perspectives. So that is the basics of views and layouts, and a little bit more on working with these activities. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. Stay tuned because we got a lot more coming, and I am just stoked. So please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I just wanted to do a quick video to briefly talk about attributes. Whew, so exciting. Now, if you have prior object-oriented programming experience, this video will be a piece of cake. If you don't, it might be a little bit of a learning curve, but it really shouldn't be too bad because this concept is not hard, but you're going to see attributes a lot. So when we're working on an activity, let's just say we're on the main activity, and we have some view, such as a text view, that says hello world. Well, this is the appearance, this is the presentation, but behind the scenes, this thing has a ton of available attributes. And if you come from object-oriented programming, you may have heard of properties. These are the same thing. So if you want to understand this, think of what an attribute is. For example, for a person, you can describe a person such as me in numerous ways. You can say they're incredibly intelligent, they're extremely handsome, and so forth. These are the attributes that describe this person. When it comes to a view, we have other stuff, but it works exactly the same way. And all of this is going to be defined inside of the XML. So if you remember, the XML describes how this all appears. So it's going to look something like this. Now I actually have it for reference over here because there's no way I can remember it. But we'll see if I got it down. So it looks something like this. We have a text view, and then we have some stuff inside, and then we eventually close it using a / and a greater than sign. I always forget which one. I always have to do the alligator thing or whatever. And then inside of here, you're going to see something like this. So Android, and then a colon, and then it'll have some attribute or property. You can use those interchangeably, but in this context, it's more appropriate to say attribute. But just so you understand, they are the same concept. So Android, and then we'll have something like text. And this is the text attribute, which describes what the word that shows up is. So we can say equals hello world. Now, all of the syntax, don't really worry about it. You can worry about that later when you're advanced. But the main thing you should know is that this here is double quoted, and it's an example of a string. So strings, just quoted sequence of characters, like so. So the value that the string is describing does not include the quotes, so it's just hello world. And that's what's going to show up inside of the activity. All right, so text is just one example of an attribute, but there are a lot others. So as another example, we can have clickable. So it might look like this. We'll have clickable here, and then equal true. Now in this situation, it's not quoted because it's a different data type, at least I think. Oh no, it's actually quoted. Sorry. All right, so this is gonna be true. I'm not gonna edit that out. You guys understand I make mistakes on occasion, very rarely, but from now, time to time, I'll make a mistake. So in this situation, we are setting the clickable attribute. And this is all hard-coded in the XML, and later we're going to learn how to change these values inside of the code. But for now, I just want you to understand that concept. And this is going to be independent for each type of view. So for example, a button, that's something you can click or poke. That's going to have different attributes than text. And all the other views are going to have different attributes as well. And also, if you have two of the same types of views. So for example, if we have a text view and we have another text view, these values are going to be set independently. So this one's going to have its own value, and this one will have its own value. This one can have clickable true, and this one can have clickable false. It just depends on what you want for each individual view. So that's your basics of attributes, nothing too crazy. And just so you guys know where to edit these, you can type them out in the XML, but I don't really advise that. I think the best way is to just use the view when you're looking at the activity editor and you have something like this. You select that, it's going to pop up on the right, and it's going to have the attributes, and you can set the values there. So that's your introduction to attributes. Now we're going to get hands-on talking about one of the most important attributes, and that is actually an ID, because we're going to be using the ID throughout this entire series. So we're going to learn how to set one of those and all that in the next video. So go check it out. Thank you for watching and subscribe. Hey everyone, welcome. This should be a pretty simple video because all I really want to do is talk about one important attribute that you should know about and understand a little bit on how to work with it. And that is the ID attribute. Now, if you don't know anything about attributes, be sure to check out the previous video. And obviously, if you're new to this series, I'd encourage you to go back and watch the whole thing. So that's definitely what you want to do. But either way, let's get started. When you select something on here, you can see that over here there's this ID, and in this case, it is blank. Now, does it matter that it's blank? Well, currently, no, it doesn't really matter because it's serving its purpose. The only purpose this thing has right now is to say, hello world. Yay, it did it. But later on, we're going to want to reference this view so we can modify it or work with it inside of code. And in order to do things dynamically like that, we often want to grab things using the ID. So let's take a look first at the XML. If you select text down here, and you can X out of or minimize this stuff down here, we can go to text, and it should show up right here. But it's not. There's nothing about an ID here. You can see these other properties, or attributes I should say. We have the text attribute here, and you can go in here and you can change that, and you can see how it changes over here on the right, but there's nothing about an ID. So you have one of two options. So you have two options, I guess. You can do one of them, which is to set it manually in here, which I don't really recommend, but I'll just show you how it works, just so we can get some use to the syntax. Say ID, and then just say hello, like so. And it obviously doesn't really like that, so let's maybe get rid of those. See, I can't even do it right. Like, this is why you don't do it in the XML, because for one, it's just more work. So let's go back to the design, and we'll go over to the ID, and we'll just say hello. And we'll see what it generated. So go back to the text, and oh, you can see it actually is a little bit more fancy. It has this @+, which we'll probably get into that later. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know what that means, but it's a thing. You'll see that with the ID, and you can see that this is what the actual ID value is. Now, just for a little sneak peek, you'll probably get to see this later on in the code. So you might see something like ID, yeah, and then dot, and then hello. That is how we can get a reference to that object or to that view. So this view here is actually an object, and when we talk about it in code, we'll probably refer to it as an object. Now, I'm just kind of jumping into the deep end here, so don't worry about that too much, because we're going to be getting into that in the upcoming videos, because we really can't do any cool dynamic applications without working with the IDs and understanding a little bit how to do that inside of the code. So we talked about first how to do it in the XML and inside of the design, and next we're going to learn how to work with it inside of the code. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to get into more stuff. Thank you. I'll see you then. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, what do I want to talk about? Well, I actually just want to talk a little bit about the concept of things being static or dynamic. Now, This might not be 100% focused on Android development, but I think that's fine because I don't just want you to come out of this knowing how to create some apps but know nothing else about computers or programming. I want to teach you that in a way that's going to help you in your entire career. So this is going to be a really helpful video if you don't know this information already. And if you do, sorry, but you can watch it or you can move on to the next episode. So you'll often hear the words static and you'll hear the words dynamic. Now, the meanings of these, what you think of them might depend on your age or when you got into computer programming or software development or whatever you want to call it. So let's go back far, long time ago, at least for me, when web pages started being created. There was what were known as static web pages and dynamic web pages. So a static web page, you go on there, it has some info about your website, it might have a form for you to fill out for an email, and then, you know what happened next? Dynamic web pages. Boom! The whole world exploded and everything changed because now instead of just having this information, we could generate parts of the website. So for example, we could have the header that could be coded from one location. We could have the footer that could be coded from another location, and then we could generate the body, and this body would come from a database. So things changed, things were dynamic, and one of the real benefits of this is that you could create the content to be specific for a particular user. So rather than saying welcome, you could say welcome Caleb, or hello handsome, or whatever you wanted to say. Well, I guess handsome wouldn't be dynamic. Yeah, Caleb would be dynamic because it would change depending on what your name is. So that was the introduction of dynamic websites. And this really started with PHP, and now every programming language you can create websites with. So yeah, that's the first dynamic. Now the second dynamic has to do more with the way things look. So this also deals with websites, but it also deals with apps. So when you're talking about a dynamic look of a website, you're talking about that the things resize or fit depending, no matter what the device you're viewing it with. So if you're viewing it on a desktop, it looks good. If you're viewing it on a mobile phone, it looks good. That's because the content is dynamic, or a better word would be responsive to whatever device you're viewing it on. So that's another way you might hear dynamic, and the same thing for mobile phones and apps. So if you open an app on a big fat phone, it's gonna fill up the screen and look good. If you view it on a tiny thing, it should look good. View it on a tablet, it still looks good. So that is another way dynamic is used. Now the third way, and this is the most important. Sorry, I keep going back and forth. I'm antsy here. I'll try to chill out. Okay. So the third way is, you ready for this? The way you access information and work with information. So XML, the stuff you define when you're creating your application, this is all static. And we talked about in the previous episode how to statically define an ID for a view for any component on the screen. We do that inside the visual editor or using the XML. And it's static because it's pretty much hard-coded, meaning we can see the value in the code. And although this works for the start, we don't want to do this all the time. We want to avoid it whenever possible because it can be limiting. Instead, we want to do things dynamically. Now, don't take me the wrong way, all you people with 50 years of experience. I am not saying doing things statically is bad or setting up the structure in XML is bad. You should do that, but anytime you want things to change or adapt or update mid-app so you don't have to make a new version of your application and change it, that's when things become dynamic. So you can change parts of the view dynamically inside of code. And we want to make this very general, or I hesitate to use the term generic, but basically we want to make it so that we can make our code work in as many scenarios as possible with as little code as possible. So here's an example of a way we can make our code dynamic. You can say r.id. I think that's uppercase. I'm just gonna take a little peek over here. No, jeez. r.id, and then we could say an ID of an element such as hello. We'll be using this as well as find view by ID to basically grab an element and update that. So later on we can have people type in what they want a text box to say and it will update. That's how you can do things like, for example, a shopping app or a shopping cart list or a to-do list. People can type in the things they got to do, press the button, and it adds to the list. It's all done dynamically in the code. So none of those values are hard-coded. You know, you're not going to put every single possibility of things people could shop for in the application. You're just going to grab whatever value comes from a text box. We're going to take that, store it in what's known as a variable. You could probably even skip this step, but take that variable value and display it on the activity. So mind the terrible drawing, but you guys get the point. So that's just a little bit on the history of things being static versus dynamic. So thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to stay tuned and check out the next video, because we are going to be probably making some buttons, just getting some more experience with the different things we can do. So go check that out, and I'll see you then. Peace out. Hey, welcome back everybody. In this episode, we're going to do something crazy. I'm going to be teaching you how to create a button. I know, it's pretty insane. So here's what you do. You go to the palette and you select button. You can see I'm in the common, and you take button and you drag it and you drop it. Boom, and that's how you create a button, guys. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe and check. All right, I got a little bit more info. Feel free to stay. So basically, when we create this button, and the reason I felt necessary to create a video dedicated to this is because I have a little bit of extra information. And when we create this button, you'll first see that it automatically gives us an ID for this button. So that's pretty cool. If you remember from earlier episodes, this hello world down here, it did not default with an ID. We actually had to type that out here. That's important. We use the ID to access this view from our code. So just to see this, you might see something like, and don't worry we'll get into the details of this later. Oh, what in the world was that? Okay. ID dot, and then you can say hello, which that's referring to that hello world. But we could also say button, and you can see our button automatically appears here. So that's nice. That's the first thing you should know. The second thing, and we're going to get into the positioning stuff in detail. What? Claire, is that you? I swear, Claire, if you're finding some new means of communication via the internet, I am going to flip. All right, I'm going to mute this. All right. So we'll get into the positioning in detail later on, but you can see with this hello world, you can see how it's kind of anchored in the middle of the screen. And even if we go to a different sized phone, so let's go with something larger, it still positions in the middle. You know, it kind of thinks about it for a second, and then eventually it just pops right into the middle. But our button over here, it's just going all over the place. How do we position that? So let's go back to the phone we had. So we were on the Pixel 3a. And you can also see this over here. The view is not constrained. Come back. It only has blah, 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 so it'll jump to 0, 0. So what that means is we run this thing, it's going to go pop and jump up to the top corner. So here's how we fix that. We're in what's known as a constraint layout, and this allows us to basically define the position of this button based on the layout that it's in. So there's this little drop down here, this default margin, and yours is probably on 0. You go ahead and put that on 8. That's pretty good. And then what you can do is you can put this button anywhere, but you can take this little white circle, drag it, and pop to the top, and that's where it's going to go. You can do the same thing for the left, and there you go. So now it's anchored 8 dp. What's dp? I forget. All right, so dp, density independent pixels. So it's a little bit more dynamic. It's 1 pixel on a 160 dpi screen. So that's what we're going to be using for sizing. So it's going to be 8 of those from the top and 8 of those from the left. So what we can do is we can run this and just confirm that it works. But in the meantime, we can take a look on different devices. So if we go to a watch, you can see it's still right in the corner. If we go to a TV, look, it's still right there in the corner. So it looks like it's anchored pretty well, and that's pretty good. It's a little slow sometimes. Probably because I'm trying to launch this thing and it takes forever. My goodness. But you can run this thing and you can see our button is right there. When you click it, nothing happens. So obviously buttons tend to do things. That's what they're for. So let's talk about that. And that's what actually we're going to focus on dedicated in the next episode. But we'll just get on the basics here. One of the attributes of this is the on click. And this can be used to define some code that will execute when this button is clicked. And that is going to be defined inside of this Mainactivity.java. So we'll have something that looks similar to this, probably down here. And then we basically link the two, so when we click that button, it is executed. And that is what is known as an event listener. So that's the basics. Hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more of how to work with views and layouts, and maybe even a little bit on the positioning. So obviously we just scratched the bare surface, but I can only cover so much, and I'd like to get into each one of these things in more detail as we go on. So thank you guys for watching. Have fun placing buttons. I know it's exciting. And yeah, let me see what you got. Show me your app with buttons. Well, what can you do? Thank you guys, and see you in the next episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, there's a couple things I wanted to talk to you about. Actually, first thing, hope you like the red shirt. I thought I'd switch it up from green. And back to what we were talking about. We're going to be talking about event handling and methods. All right, so if you have no prior programming experience, this video might be a little bit much. But I do have videos on Java methods if you want a little bit more substance, a little bit more practice with that. So let's first talk about methods briefly. Briefly, and then we'll go back, circle around, and talk about event handling. All right, so what is a method? Well, let's say we have, I'm going to show you what a method is by making one. Let's say we want some code that'll toggle something, and let's say we have a button. And let's say we want to toggle the color, like, from green to red, and then back to green. Well, we can make a method to do that for us. So a method is just a section of code that we can execute over and over and over again. So it basically makes our life easier. Rather than taking that code and copying and pasting it every time something happens, all we have to do is execute this toggle method. And when you make a method, it's going to look something like this. Public void, the name of it, some parentheses, and then some curly braces, and this is where the code goes. All right, so the void here, if you think of a method as this black box where I guess a white box, but it's here. There we go. Now it's a white box, completely white box. All right, so this has some input, and this potentially has some output. So the in goes here. The out, well, you say if there's going to be some output by putting something here. When you say void, you're saying there's no output. So this void here means no output. Meaning it's not going to like calculate something and give you back a number, it's just going to do it. So when you say something, when you say, hey, toggle, it's going to change it from green to red, and then it's done. It doesn't give you back a message saying, hey, the toggling was a success, it changed to green or it changed to red. It doesn't do anything like that. It just does its task and it's done. So that's what the void means. It means no output. All right, so the input here, this is what's known as parameters, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the context. Okay, sorry, I can't talk and write at the same time. Parameters. I can't spell. We're going to talk a little bit more about parameters in the context of event handling in the next episode, and then the following episode we're going to get hands-on with event handling, so check out those 2 episodes. So you got the basics of methods. Now you just got to figure out the code to actually toggle, which we'll be talking about some tricks and stuff you can do later on in the series, but that's not the point of this episode. We're just talking about methods here. So when it comes to events, what is that? Well, let's say we have this button here. Okay, and what do you do with buttons? That's right, you click them. Especially if they're big and red and say, do not click, or do not press, then you definitely have to press it. So you click this button. Now what? Well, if we want it to actually do something, we need to create an event handler, which is just the method. So in the attributes of this button, there's a special one called onClick. And we can assign it the value, the name of a method. So for example, toggle. And inside of the XML, it's going to look a little something like this. And again, XML is not my specialty, so probably something like this. Button, and then like Android, :onClick. And then that's going to be assigned a value, toggle. Like so. Blah, blah, a bunch of other stuff, and the button. So that's what it's going to look like inside the XML. We've seen that in the previous episodes, what the XML looks like. You go into the little editor thing, and then you click view the, you go watch the other videos. So that is how you would do that. And then anytime you click this button, this method is going to be executed, which we just showed you guys how to create that. So that's going to be in the code portion for your activity. So maybe it's mainactivity.java. Whatever it is, it's going to have a .java extension. That's where the code goes. So we're going to be doing that in the upcoming episodes, but the one thing I wanted to make sure you guys knew is that when we're doing this with onClick, this is real easy. We just set the attribute to toggle, or whatever we want the method to be named. We define the method, and we're good to go. But there's other events out there that we could create event listeners for, and it's a little bit more complicated. onClick is special. You don't have to do anything too crazy. You can just do it in the attributes. So don't worry about that for now. We're going to start with onClick, and then later on we'll talk about some of the other events we can listen for. So hopefully that was a good introduction. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about the parameters or the input for this event listener that we happen to call toggle, because that's actually pretty important. So go check it out, because you don't want to miss that one. We're going to be using that information throughout probably the rest of this entire series. So that one is definitely important. So please be sure to subscribe and check out that next episode. Peace out. Welcome back to the world's greatest. Oh man, my chalk just broke it. Going through this pretty quickly. Not green, gross. What was I saying? Welcome back to the world's most professional Android tutorial series. This episode, we're going to be talking about parameters in the context of the onClick event handler. So that was a lot of words. So, this is the gross chalk. I don't know, there's like 2 types of chalk. Like, this is the good kind, but I mixed some in here because I'm stupid. Here, this is the good kind. There we go. All right. So we have something like this. Public, we're making a method, by the way. Void, and we can name it whatever we want. We'll call it toggle. And we didn't really, we kind of ignored this part a little bit in the previous episode. But now I want you to write out this, or type it out if you're typing. View, I don't know. We'll just call it V. Close that parentheses a little closer. Curly brace, curly brace. And then you can put your code in here to do whatever you want the method to do, to toggle the color, toggle whether it's active or whatever. Now this here, again, is the input, and the technical term for it is a parameter. So we have one parameter. And that one parameter is called v. So the identifier, or the name of this parameter, is v. And what exactly is this? Well, when we have a button, and we set the on click to something like toggle, well, what happens here is when we click it, this method is executed, and this button itself is assigned to this variable. So when we click this button, v refers to this button here. Now, how does this work? Because this is a visual thing. It's a button. This is just a letter. How's that work? Well, when we have this letter here, it's actually just a name to represent an object. So I don't want to go in like a whole, I don't want to get off topic too much with object-oriented programming, but let me just give you like a little snippet real quick. We have classes and we have objects. So classes kind of define structures. They're like the cookie cutters. And then the objects are the actual cookies that you make. So they're instances of these classes. So the class here is view. The object here is v. So v is an instance of this view object. So when we see a button like this, it's actually just a visual representation of some entity in memory known as an object, and we get a reference to it and name it v here. So that means we can work with this button in code through this variable v, and the variable's type is of view. So that's a lot of information. We're going to go through a hands-on example of this in the next episode, so don't quit yet. Not yet. Wait till like after next episode, then you can quit. All right, so inside of code, we can say something like v, and then use dot notation, so v dot, and then we'll get access to a whole bunch of different things related to this button. So do you remember in the visual editor all the attributes you can set on the right-hand side there, depending on if that's where you set it up? By default on the right-hand side there, well, you can access these through the object reference to this button, because this is now referring to this button here. So for example, we could do something like get ID. And IDs drive me bonkers because I can never remember if it's all capital, or if the first letter is capital, or none of it's capital. So I'm just going to take a little peek and .get. Yeah, I got it right. Yeah. So this is a way that we can get the ID, and then we could assign it to an integer or use it or whatever. So that's where we're getting into some of the more coding stuff. Whatever you want to do with that get ID, the ID value, you can treat it as if it's just any other integer. We could also do things like modify the button, so we could say v dot set enabled, and we could set this to false. Actually, this is yeah, there we go. We could pass in the value false. Boom. Now the button is like grayed out and you can't click it. So if you want it to be like a one-time button, like activate, and then it's like grayed out and you can't click it, that's how you do it, I think. I want to check. Yeah, so set enabled, and then yep, it takes a one parameter, or I guess in this situation it's an argument, the thing you pass into a parameter. When you're invoking a method, this is known as an argument. So it takes one argument and it's a Boolean, true or false. So that's how we can disable that button, make it no longer clickable. So pretty much any of the visual stuff you would do with the button, you could also do it in code, and you get reference to that button because it's passed in here. Now, here's the cool thing. All right, let me clean up some of this junk here. All right, so let's say you have two buttons. All right, not one button, but two buttons. All right. And you want both of these, when you click them, either one, you want that specific button to be disabled. Well, we create one method and we can set it as the on-click handler for both of them. And because that parameter, each time we click one of these buttons, that parameter is going to have the value of whichever one we clicked. So the first time, let's say we click this one, V here is going to refer to that button. So it'll be disabled because we say V dot set enabled equals set enabled false. I don't want to type it. I don't want to write it out. So it's specific to that button because we're not being specific to which button is being disabled. We're using a general variable here that changes based on which button we click. So it's not like we're saying, hey, the button with the ID of 12, set it to disabled. That would be specific, and then it would only work for one button. So by being general, we basically made this method here, this event handler, more effective, and it can work for any of the buttons. So try it out. Go into your editor and create a method and set a parameter that looks like this. View V. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it passed in, you can name it button, but just V, just because it's kind of similar here. And then just say V dot, and look at all the different stuff you can do, and depending on which button you click, depends on which button is affected. If you click this one, that button's going to be affected. If you click this one, that one's going to be affected. So hopefully all that information makes sense. Now I know it is very fluffy, but that's because I like to go over the concepts face to face to camera here. So then when we go and type stuff out, it actually makes sense because you're able to tie the code to these concepts that we just covered in this video. It's a more effective way of teaching, trust me. I know, because I'm like really good at this stuff, right? No, I'm just playing. But I believe this is the most effective way to learn. You focus on the concepts first, and then you go apply the code, and they'll click, and it'll make sense. So thank you guys for watching. Check out the next video to get some hands-on for this, and be sure to subscribe. Hey guys, welcome. In this episode, we're going to get some hands-on experience working with the on-click event for buttons. And let me just show you what we got so far. So we got this button, and if you want to see what it does, let's go over to my sick new smartphone. Click button, and look, it does absolutely nothing. Wow, worthless. Well, how can we make this do something? Well, if you need a little bit more of the background information, check out the previous 2 episodes, because that's where we kind of got that foundation. But if you're just looking for, hey, here's what you code, that's what this video is for. So let's get to it. All right, let me move that back over there and scroll over. Okay, so when we click one of these buttons, well, it's the same button, so if you just want one, you can click that. So, all right, so we got this button, and over on the right, one of the common attributes is on click. Now you could go through and find it too. The common one just kind of puts the most common ones, obviously. So I don't know why I'm actually showing you guys. It's not that valuable, but you can go on here and you can set it here. Now you can also search. So you can just search on click and give it a value. Let's just say disable. So that's the value we give it. And I'm gonna close out of that. So right here, and you can check in the text. So if you want to check out the XML, scroll down and you can see we have it right here, and it's complaining, blah, 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 it wasn't found. So basically we're saying, hey, we want this method to execute, but it's not finding that method. That's because we haven't coded it yet. So that makes sense. So now what we need to do is we need to open mainactivity.java. You can find that inside of this folder here. And we're going to create a method here. Now what we do is we just say public void disable. So the name has to match. We are in charge of this part right here. We can name it whatever we want. As long as this value here matches this value here, then we're good. Then parentheses, we say view, v. Again, the v, you can put whatever you want there, but you need to have this spelled like this. So you can't change this to something else. That's not going to work. So keep that as view, and then you can name that whatever you like. If you want to follow along exactly, just name it V for simplicity. And there we go. Now when we take a look at this, it's still complaining. Maybe if we save, disable, let's see if we got everything. I think everything's wired up right. Let's just hover over this one more time. Yeah, I think it's working. It's just confused. It gets that way sometimes. So I think we should be able to, X out of that. We should be able to run this. We shouldn't get any errors. But if we do, we will fix those right away. And literally building takes like 10 hours. Cannot find symbol class view. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, we actually need to do an import. So if you look up here in the code, there's this import section, and we actually need to add one of these. So there might be a way to generate what we need from that. I'm not sure. But what we can do is we can say import Android dot view, like so. And now let's check activity underscore main. Not quite happy. Let's try dot view dot view. There we go. All right, and if you're wondering how I knew what to type there, it's just from this activity main.xml. Sorry, I keep jumping back and forth here, but you can hover over this, and it'll tell you what the issue was. So let me go change this real quick. So we'll make that incorrect. Go back to the XML, hover over this, and you can see it says android.view.view with a capital V there, not found. So that's how I knew what to import. All right, let's go back to our code and fix that up, like so. Now we should be able to run this app, and we shouldn't get any build issues, but it's still not going to do anything because this method is going to be executed and nothing's going to happen because we don't have any code here. So here is where we can run some code, but just to prove it to you guys, let's take a look at our app, click the button, and make sure nothing happens. All right, nothing's happening. So let's work with this parameter here. Remember, this is the button that was passed in. So the button that was clicked, we can say v.setEnabled false. Save this. We'll run this real quick. And now what should happen is it's going to disable whatever button is passed in. And since we clicked the only button on the screen, that's the one that should be disabled. So let this load for a second. I literally think my computer is going to explode. Click button and check that out. It's disabled. We can't click it. So that's that, guys. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll get into something new in the next episode. So be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you then. Peace out. Hey guys, welcome back. This is a continuation of the previous episode, but if you're just jumping in wondering how to disable a bunch of buttons, this is the video for you. So essentially what I want to show in this episode is that when you create an event handler like this method here, very simple, you can reuse this event handler for numerous buttons. You know, you might think when you first start, your first thought might be to create a new method for each button and what happens, but this is very generalized to work with numerous buttons. So that's what I wanted to show you in this episode. So to do that, first I wanted to show you the process of creating a new button. So we'll go to the design on our page, and we're just going to throw a button in here. And don't worry too much about the design right here. I just want to get things working, but just so we can kind of get on the same page, we can link these together so they're always the same distance. All right, so they're always going to be 8 dp by default. So beautiful. Now what we do is in here on the onClick, we can say the same thing, disable, and we can run this app. And the way this works is when we click this first button, this code is going to be executed. And then when we click this second button right here, it's going to execute that same code again. So the first time it's going to go through each line of this, and then it's going to stop and it's going to wait for a new event. Then we click the second one and it goes through each line again. So let's run the app and see what happens. So we click that first button, disabled, second button, disabled. Beautiful. So that's how we can kind of generalize, make our program a little bit more useful without having to write a bunch of code over and over and over again. And that's the beauty of methods. We basically extract some functionality, give it a name, in this case disable, and we can reuse it numerous times. So that is the value proposition of using methods. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So just to show you how this works, I threw together this terrible application. I mean, it's all right, but me and my friend put it together in like 20 minutes while we were playing Call of Duty, so it's not amazing by any means. But we're going to basically expand on this concept and try to produce a better version of this application that's a little bit more professional and doesn't look like a third grader designed it. But let me run this thing. Oh, come on. All right, let me set this to false. Sorry. This, you know when you're like trying to show someone something cool and it like doesn't work? That's the worst. All right, let's run this thing, and we will minimize this, and we'll wait for our application to refresh over here. All right, so this is a very basic tic-tac-toe. It's not even finished, honestly. We don't have any logic to decide who won because we got really involved in our Call of Duty game, and it just took over, so priorities, right? So you click a button, it disables it, and it gives it the value X. So X is first, now it's O's turn. O goes here. It's disabled, and it sets the value to O. X's turn now, and so forth. You get how it works, but there's actually no logic to determine that they won. So that's probably the next thing we would implement, plus make the design not look really terrible. Yeah. But the way this works is we basically just have some variable that exists beyond the method, so kind of like it's a class level variable, and that will switch from X to O. And then we just assign that to the value here and disable it. So that's how that works. Just wanted to show you guys a little bit more on how to make your methods more useful. So thank you guys. Be sure to subscribe and check out the next video because we're going to talk about logging, which is a very useful tool for debugging and just following along with your program and all kinds of other stuff. So check it out. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you then. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the greatest Android tutorial series on planet Earth. Alright, so this episode we're going to be talking about logging. It's really super simple, but it's actually kind of cool because it gives you some kind of categorization capabilities. So basically what we're going to be doing is the equivalent of a console log in Java or a console.writeline in C# or a whatever it's called in all these other languages. Basically, how can we write to the console for our sake for debugging or just following along with what's going on in the application, or if we want to log if things were successful or a failure or whatever it might be. Well, it's real simple. All you gotta do is say log.d, and this is gonna take 2 arguments, and you will need to import android.util.log, as you can see I did there. So the first thing is kind of like the category, or what you might categorize it as, which is what I just said. So we'll just say success, and then comma. This is where we put a message. So we can say button disabled, or whatever we want to say right there. Now when we run this, let me stop right there. Where exactly does this information come up? Well, it's actually in this logcat down here in the bottom left-hand corner. If you're not seeing that, just go up here to the windows and scroll around, try to find it, maybe do a search. I guess I don't really know where it is right offhand. So tools, view, and then tool windows, and then logcat. So that's how you find it. All right. Now, when you see this, at first, there's just going to be an overabundance of information, way too much, and it's hard to actually see what's going on. So what we can do is we can actually search for our tag right here. So we will say success, and I'm not seeing anything. Okay, that means we actually need to, let's see. We need to make sure we are on the right device here. because it looks like this one here was disconnected for some reason. And there we go. So we get button disabled. I'm not sure what that's about. I don't know why that one is here. I only see one option up here. But anyways, you can search for your tag there to clean up the messages, because you can see there can be quite a lot. So if you want to see all of the success ones, you can do that. If you have other ones that say fail, so you could put one on the on create. Obviously, this one's kind of a lie because it actually is working just fine, but we'll just pretend. All right, so we will run this. And now we can filter for fail. And you can see it shows up right there. Now it did catch a couple of other things, like failed to do something here and failed here. So if you want to make sure that doesn't happen, just make sure you give your tag name something unique enough so that it doesn't show up when you're searching for it. So that's how you can do that. You could say fail, or you could search success. And now it's only going to show up when we select a button. So there we go. Thank you guys for watching. That's your basics of logging for Android. And if you have any questions, unless the question is why it's called logcat and log.d, because I have no idea. So maybe you guys can help me there. Why is it log.d and logcat? Thank you guys, and be sure to subscribe and check out the next episode. Peace out. Hey everyone, welcome. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to change the text on a button. Now we're going to be doing it when you click the button. So this is our event handler for that button. V refers to the button that we clicked, and we can start messing with its attributes by using the dot operator right here. So your first thought might be v dot and then something like set text. And there's a couple options here: set text alignment, set text or direction, set tooltip text, but there's nothing just set text. So this is not a capability on the view class, but it is on the button class. So what we can actually do is we can take our object, which is currently of type view, and we can cast it to type button. So we're going to get a new object of type button. So what is that going to look like exactly? Well, hopefully that wasn't too much of a mumbo jumbo, but just follow along. Button b equals, and then in parentheses you're going to say button, and then the name of the variable we currently have. So our variable is currently named v. We're casting it to a button. This process is going to give us a new object of type button, which we assign here to this variable b. You could also name it button if you'd prefer. That works too, because this is lowercase and this is uppercase. Now, when you do this, you're going to get some issues. It's not going to like it, and you actually need to do an import. So you say import android.widget.button with a capital B. All right, now what we can do is we can say button dot set, and look at all these set text. We have so many different ones. The reason we have so many different ones is because these are known as overloads, meaning we can throw in different types of data. We can throw in numbers, we can throw in strings, or whatever. So what we're going to do is we're just going to throw in a string that says disabled. Now, I want to run this. And what should happen is when we execute this, we click the button and it should set that text. If it decides to actually run. But while it does that, I want to show you guys something. Okay, we got an issue. Let's just check what is, we need to make it set text. There we go. So we set text and then we run. Now, while this runs, I did want to think of ways that we don't have to worry so much about these imports. See if there's a way to automatically do it. You may have saw in the previous video, I ran into that issue, and I was doing some research, and it looks like you can configure it to do that automatically. So you can follow for Windows. I'm on Mac, so I'm going to go into Android Studio Preferences, and then Editor, General, Auto Import. And we'll see if we can find that. So we'll go to Android Studio Preferences, Editor, General, Auto Import,
and then it was change insert imports on paste value to all. Don't ask, just do it. All right, there we go. So now in theory, we shouldn't have to worry so much about the imports, but you need to make sure you set that too, or you might not get all the imports I have. So make sure you do that. All right, let's run this, see what happens. We click our button, it turns disabled, and the text changes to disabled. All right, cool. So that is how you do that. Let's just do a quick review. This is an object. It has the type view. We cast that object to a button, which gives us a new object, which we assign to this variable called button. We then type setText, which is a method on this new object. It's available to us because it's of type button. We pass in the value we want, and this happens when we click the button. So that is all. Again, if you're new to programming and object-oriented programming and all this stuff, this can be a little bit much. For now, what I want you to do is, if you don't understand all that, just type it out as is and understand that's how you change the text of things. And as you get more practice doing that, it'll start to make more sense. And if you already understand all that, I'm not trying to be annoying about it. I just want to make sure that everybody can follow along and be up to speed. You can also check out my Java videos if you need a little bit more practice with object-oriented programming. But the main thing you need to know is how to just cast this object to a different type of type button and then call setText. That's all you really need to know for now. You don't need to know everything. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe. We got a lot more coming, and I'm really excited. So I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this episode, we're going to be talking about find view by ID and this magical thing called R. Now, I'm trying orange on today, so it's a little different. Let me know if it fits well. I'm not really sure what color I should try next. Also, shout out to Hobby Lobby. Shirts are like $3. Also, I'm gonna go get a haircut real quick. All right, that's at least a little better. It's a little short. I probably don't even need this. I can just write the notes on my forehead. Now my shirt's all itchy, so I'm gonna change that as well. There we go. All right, so what are we talking about? We're gonna be talking about the R class and find view by ID. So up until this point in the series, we've talked about doing an event handler for a button click. And when we do something like this, we have a parameter in that event handler that allows us to work with that button. And it looks something like this. Where this is the type, and this is the name that we give the view that's passed in. In that case, it would be the button. And this would be within a method, so it'll look something like this. Public void, I'm out of space. We'll just call it X, whatever. It doesn't really matter what it's named. The point here is we can work with the view or the button in the case of the click right here by using this variable. And you can get the object using that, but you can also get other objects using this special method, which is find view by ID. Now I always forget if it's find view or get view, so I had to check there for a second. It's find view by ID, and then you pass in an ID. And we talked back earlier why IDs are so important. This is why. We use them to access different elements and to get an object that references that view on the activity page on the screen. Now this method takes an integer, and we don't exactly have integers for the IDs of all of the different views we have on our activity. So we use this special class R, and what we do is we say r.id. And then the string name that we assigned to a particular view. So for example, we could have named it btn for button. Now this here, this whole thing, find view by ID and then passing r.id.button, that is going to return a view object. So we would then assign this back to a view object, or in the case if it's a button, we could assign it to a button, like so. So let's go over another example of how this could be useful. Let's say we have our activity, and on here we have a button and we have some text. what we can do is we can actually change the value of this text when we click this button using this R class. So instead of getting a reference to this button here, we could get a reference to this text by whatever ID we had it assigned. So for example, txt. We no longer would be assigning it to a button. We'd be assigning it to a text view. And we'll see this hands-on in the next episode. And we'll probably change the name to something like T, whatever you want to name it. And then what you can do is you can say T dot set text and pass in some value. So that is how you can access other elements or other views besides the one that's passed in through the parameter. So this one here, that refers to the button, but we're able to access a view other than the button by using this right here. So hopefully these concepts make sense. What we're going to do is in the next episode, we're going to go through a hands-on example of this, of changing elements using R. So check out the next video, and yeah, peace out. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and support me on Patreon.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? In this episode, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be talking about the r.id class and the find view by ID method. Now, let's just take a look at what we got here. If you're just jumping in, you should be able to catch up real quickly. We got this button here. It has the ID button 11, very creative, original. And we have this onClick, which is this disable method. So let's take a look at that method real quick. All it does is it sets the enabled to false. So the button that we click is going to be assigned to this V variable. We say set enabled false. And then we say set text to disabled. So when we run this, we should be able to see this in action. Literally only two things are happening, but as we've talked about in earlier episodes, you could use this method for numerous buttons and it'll work for all of them because the button passed in depends on which one you click. So you could assign disable to the event handler for numerous buttons. All right, so let's take a look at our app, click button, and it says disabled. Now what I want to do in this episode is to do that same exact thing, so the same result, but a different way. And also apologies for like the mental pollution over here. You're just gonna have to deal with that for right now. So why would you want to do this a different way? Well, right now it's not going to offer a huge benefit because we're just doing the same thing, but this way might be more versatile because it can be expanded to work with other views in your activity besides just the button passed in. What if you wanted to disable all the buttons or a particular button or whatever it might be? I'm going to show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment this junk out. Beautiful. Don't like that. That's not lined up. All right, there we go. Okay, that's close enough. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to say find view by ID. And here we have to pass in, just type this out as is, r.id. And here you get access to a whole bunch of stuff, including our view, button 11. So we click that. It shows up there. And now this is going to return a view. So it's a view object, like so. You can assign it to a variable. In this case, we'd have to name it something different than this. So we can just say something like my view or whatever you want it to be. And that works fine. Now you can reference this variable, my view dot set enabled. And we could say false. Next thing, we can do the same assignment to a button. So you can say button is equal to, and then we can cast it. My view. And if you're still curious why we have to do that step, well, when we say my view dot, and then we try to set the text, you can see there's no option for just set text, only these three options here. So that's available only on a button object, which is why we have to cast it. So button, my view, lots of buttons. It's a little redundant. All right, so then what we do is say my view dot set text, put in some value, new disable, just so you guys can make sure this is the new version and see what kind of errors we got, if there are any. One error found. This is one thing about it's not clear what the errors are, which bothers me. I can't find an easy way just to be like, oh, here's the error. Like, take a look at that. You always have to run the thing, and it takes 30 minutes. All right, so cannot find symbol method set text. All right. Oh, that's because we're doing on my view, which I was just saying you can't do that. So we have to change that to button. There we go. So we run this now. And now when we take a look at our new app, once it does its refresh, oh, it's so slow. My goodness. We click button and it says new disabled. So we did it. We disabled the button. It does exactly the same thing with just new text. But now we can do the same concept with other views inside of our activity. And that's what we're going to be showing you guys in the upcoming episodes. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys. I hope you like these videos. I don't know if they're too simple, too basic, or if they're like too quick. It's really hard for me to know because I'm creating these for so many different people. So let me know how you feel about them so far. And yeah, also I want to know your favorite flavor of juice. So leave that in the comments section below, and I will see you in the next episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, I want to talk a little bit about casting. Now, we have talked about casting here, where we casted this view to a button. So we're getting a little bit more specific. But now I want to do this inside of a larger expression and just explain one of the issues that could rise and what you need to do to fix it. So, for example, here we are taking this find view by ID and we're assigning it to a view object. Now, what if we know ahead of time it's going to be a button and we want to be more specific? Well, you can assign it to a button here, and it doesn't seem like that's a problem, but then you have to use this variable throughout all of it. And sometimes you don't want to do that. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could just get rid of this part here and just say find view by ID, pass it in, and then just say set enabled, false. That works. All right, so that's one thing we can do. We made that easier. And there's no casting here, so what am I talking about? Well, watch this next part here. When we say, and this is where it can get a little bit redundant, sometimes it's better to do the variable, but other times you're going to want to do it in an expression. And then we want to say set text and pass in a value. Like so. Well, this isn't going to work. Why is this not going to work? Well, because set text is not available on whatever this evaluates to. It evaluates to a view object. This doesn't exist on that. So you might think, okay, we just got to cast it. We will cast this to a button and everyone's happy. We can run this thing. Let's see what happens. And we get an error. Not a statement. What's not a statement? It's really vague for one. But anyways, the thing is, when we do a cast like this, the precedence, and you can look into this more, but this is lower precedence than all this other junk on the right. So what it's going to do is it's going to try to evaluate all of this stuff, and then it's going to try to cast this to a button. It doesn't even make sense. So what you actually have to do is you have to be a little bit more specific using parentheses. What are we trying to cast to a button? That's what we're trying to cast to a button. This is going to give us a view, and we want to be specific and say it's a button. So we can put parentheses around the casting and the find view by ID call, and that'll give us a button. And then on that button, we can then set the text. So let's try it now. And maybe. And it worked. Awesome. Now we actually have to see if the program functions like it should. So let's take a look at our program. We have this button, we click it, and it says new disabled, which is exactly the text we put right here. So that's just a little bit of a tip on casting. Now that is more of a Java thing over a Android development thing, but it's certainly going to come up because sometimes you're not going to want to always have to assign something back to a new variable. That can be good in some cases, and other times you don't want to do that. It's just ultimately up to you and what's easiest for you to read. So thank you guys. Hopefully this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next episode. Subscribe. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, what are we going to be talking about? Oh, you guessed it. We're going to be talking about how to get input from the user. So this is going to be very important if you want to create something like a to-do list or a shopping list, or pretty much any time you want someone to type something in, you need to know how to do this. So pay attention. All right? I'm not repeating myself. All right, I'll probably end up repeating myself later on, but we'll see. So what we need to do is we need to go into our activity main.xml, take a look at your palette, and go into text. And we'll just go with plain text. We'll drag that onto the page. Now, I mentioned, again, we're not super worried about the looks right now, but just so things are kind of looking pretty good, you can anchor these to the left and right and the top, just so it's not popped up to the top left corner. So that kind of anchors everything, and pretty soon we will get into more of the design, or just throughout this series. And honestly, there's so much stuff here that I could probably do a micro series just going through all of it. So that might be something you guys will see pretty soon here in the future, because there's a lot of stuff like that anchoring, as well as this issue here with the string. We'll get into that really soon. So we created this plain text, and it has an ID, edit text 3. I don't really like that name, so I'm just going to rename it to source. So basically it's the source of the data. And now let's talk about how to get that. So we can get that in code within the onCreate. That's going to be immediately. So is that very useful? Probably not, because that's not even going to give anybody any time to write anything. But let's just show you guys that real quick. No, I don't feel like showing you guys that. That's stupid. Why would I say, hey, it's not a good idea, and then I'll show you that? That's all right. What we're going to do is we're going to create an event handler, public void. I don't even know what to call it, man. That's the hardest part. Handle text. And this is going to take a view, call it V, whatever you want to call it. And you notice that it automatically imported this for me, but if yours did not, type that out. I showed you guys how to enable that in an earlier episode. All right, next up, what we're going to do is we have to think about how we get the value right here, this name. Right now it's just name. What can we do to grab that? Well, if you look in here, it's highlighting this text field. So that's what we want. We want this text attribute. So let's try and grab that in code. So we'll say V. All right, now here's the thing. How is this method going to get called? Well, before we grab the text, we have to figure out how is this going to get executed. Let's take a look back at our XML. And I think the easiest way is probably on a button click. So let's do that. Let's grab a button, drag that right here. We'll anchor it relative to the input field and to the left and right. Beautiful. I mean, it's not gorgeous, but it's good enough. Now on here, we can name this just button. And what is it going to do? On click, we will just call it handle text right there. And you can see it gave us some options there, which is pretty awesome. All right, so we got that. Now, when we click that button, this method will be executed. And this V here actually refers to that button, not the text. So this is why we need that r.id thing. So we'll say find view by ID, pass in r.id dot source. So that is the whole process to get the view, specifically the input field. Now what you can do is you can say dot text, or get text, but you'll notice nothing actually shows up here because we've talked about this earlier. The view doesn't have that attribute. So we need to cast it to be of whatever type this is. And you can go in here and you can see that this is just plain text. I think it's just text view. I'm not sure how to find that. I'm a terrible teacher. All right, text view T, and we'll assign this to it. So now we can say T dot get text. And let's just take a look at that real quick. When you type this out, you can hover over this. And you can see that it's a char sequence. So that's what it returns. And we want a string. So what we can do is we can say get text dot to string. And then we can assign this to a string variable. input, like so. So that's the whole process. And now input should have that value. So what we can do is we can just check that. Let's log.d, and we're going to say, just tag it as info, and then the actual value is going to be input. All right, so now what we can do is we can go into logcat, and we're going to search for our tag there, info. And when we run this application, and we take a look over here, when we click that button, that method should be executed, and it should log that whatever we put in here. So we'll click button, take a look at our log. Oh no, something's not working. Let's try typing something in here. Oh, again, we need to make sure we're on. I think this is because I had an emulator installed earlier, and I uninstalled it. I'm not really sure why it doesn't default to the correct one, but make sure you select that correct emulator there. Hey, this is real time, guys. This is the kind of stuff you experience when you're programming. I'm not gonna hide too much, all right? So you can see it actually did work. We just weren't able to see it because we were on the wrong profile here. So it executed, it put name there 3 times and then name FFE. So anytime we put something in here, we can have it show up. So we can say Caleb, select button, and there you go, button. So hopefully that's helpful on how to get the text from a text input. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to subscribe because we're going to be working with these inputs for all kinds of cool apps. Did want to mention one additional thing. We used text view here, and obviously that worked just fine. Earlier I went over to the XML and I was like, okay, what class is this? And I wasn't able to find it. Well, I actually realized if you hover over here on the component tree, it'll tell you this is of type edit text. So what we can do is we can go back to our Java and change this from text view to edit text, and that's just a little bit more appropriate. It's more specific, so everything should work exactly the same way. Obviously, if you didn't use edit text, it's not going to break anything because we tried it and it worked just fine. So our app should work exactly the same way. We just put something on here, press button, and look, it shows up right there. So I just wanted to give you guys that little bit extra information. Hopefully that just shows a little bit of how programming goes. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, I just wanted to do something real simple. I want to teach you how to take input and use it as output. So in our little app here, we are taking input in this plain text field, and I want to output that on the screen. Now, this isn't complicated. We can pretty much do the same thing we did to basically get the value from this input, but instead we're going to go the other direction. Instead of getting the value, we're going to set the value for something else. So what we'll do is we will do a text view here, and you can do the anchoring. So we'll anchor it there, there, and there. Now on the button click, I want to copy this value to this. So let's give it a cool ID. Very creative, I know. Go output. And then in here, when we click the button, this method gets called. We're getting the value from the input and we're logging it. But instead of logging it, I want to apply it to the output. So to do that, we say find view by ID. And then we say r.id dot. And then we put the ID, which is, what was the output? And then set text. Now again, it's not going to be there, so we need to cast this. So we'll say text view, and then parentheses around the casting and the find view by ID call. And then we set a value in the set text. What value we're going to put, we could manually put something here, but we don't want to do that. We want to dynamically set it. So in order to do that, we just put input, no quotes. So basic Java here, this is a string variable. So when we put it here like this, it's essentially taking the value of whatever this is and plopping it right here. So in theory, if I did everything right, it should work. And it works the same way as this log, where we're just putting the input value for the log. It goes right here. Well, instead of doing that, we're going to put it on the screen. So let's try it out. So the weather. All right, so we'll go in here. We'll put Caleb, click button, and look, the text updates to Caleb. Each time we click that button, it updates. Awesome. So very simple. Awkward. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to check out the next video because we're going to have some more exciting stuff. This one's pretty easy, so see you then. And if you have any questions, don't forget to comment, start a discussion. All right, peace out. Yo, what is up? This episode, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be doing an alert. Now, what is an alert? Well, hey, let's check out this sweet app we got right here. We basically put in some text, we click this button, and it shows up down here at the bottom. But what if instead of having it like permanently there, we just wanted it to kind of like pop up for a second and then fade off into the distance? And it's very similar to a JavaScript alert. And in fact, that's why I decided to say an alert. So if you don't know what that is, I'm going to show you that just now. And this is also a good opportunity for me to call out this imposter we have. So this guy claims to be the real Caleb Curry, and he looks exactly like me. He's making these videos, have nothing to do with technology. But I watched a couple. They're actually not too bad. So if you want to go check out some stuff that's unrelated to programming and just have some fun, here's a little plug for this guy's channel. And, you know, maybe one day he'll pass me in subscribers. I mean, I highly doubt it, but we'll see. So go check that out if you want to follow that imposter. And here's what we're going to do. Inside of a browser, you can get developer tools by right-clicking Inspect. And then you can click Console at the top. And then you just say Alert and pass in some message. There we go. And it'll pop up. And these are those things like when you go to a website and it's like, wow, you won $1 million. And it's like, do you want to continue? And the only option is like yes or okay. Whatever. Anyways, we're going to do something similar inside of Android. So how do we do that? It's kind of weird, but we're going to do it. So we'll get rid of this log D, and instead we're going to say toast. Yep, we're making some toast. No, I'm just kidding. We're making some text. So that's the method we want to call. So yeah, it's going to take three things. The first is the activity. Well, we're in an activity. We're on the main screen. So to do that, we can say this. We're going to say, hey, the activity we're currently on. Whenever we say this in the context of a class, it's talking about whatever instance it's on. So the instance of this main activity. So yeah, Java. If you need more info, go check out my Java series, but yeah, just type this. All right. Next up, we need, what was it? I forget. So what we can do is we can go on a new line and we can take a look at the signature, make text, and look at this. You can go through here and you can see what it expects. So it takes a char sequence. So let's just put in the message there, I believe. And then the third thing, stop going away, is the duration. So we will say alert. And then lastly, we'll say toast.length_long. So that's an enumeration. It basically gives us you have to choose one of numerous possibilities. And then that's not it. We actually have to say dot show. So yeah, a lot of stuff here. Definitely a lot easier to do in JavaScript, but hey, whatever. Let's just go with what we got, and we'll get rid of this line here. Save this, and we'll execute this. And now, in theory, when we click the button, this text should pop up on our phone. So let's give it a try. Click the button, and look down here. You can barely see it, but it's gray. It says alert right there. And each time we click it, it pops up. So you can do that when you want to signify something happened, or maybe something asynchronously finished, or you know something happens and you just want it to pop up for a second and go away.
But now we can actually take whatever this value is and show it up there just the same way as we've done before. Instead of saying alert here, all we have to do is say input, like so. All right, now in theory, it's going to take this value from this string right here, and it's going to output it in our toast machine. So why it's called toast, I have no idea. Why is the logging thing called logcat? I really don't know. The world may never know. All right, click button. It says name. Let's try something else here. Subscribe. Click button. And obviously we have some issues here. You can see it down there by the spacebar. So I guess it does show up. And we'll work on improving that throughout the course. But for now, you know the little bit of the basics. You can use this for your own sake, for debugging, or just to checking to see if things are working, or to signify something that you want to fade away. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully that was helpful. Again, please be sure to subscribe, and go check out that phony The Real Caleb Curry if you want some stuff on tactical gear, unboxings, probably some fashion, because you know I'm very fashionable if you guys haven't seen my wardrobe. You know, life stuff, basically the real me beyond the computer. So go check it out. Peace out.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is a review episode. So what are we going to be doing? That's right. We're going to be talking about all of these things, which I wrote out because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember half of them if I didn't write them down. So this is what we've talked about in the last 20, 25, 27 videos, or whatever it is. And we're not going to go in a ton of detail of these, but if there's anything on this list that's like, ooh, really confusing, or you have no idea what it is, then you might want to review some of the previous episodes. And that's with two exceptions, fragments and intents. We barely talked about intents, and we haven't even talked about fragments yet. I'm going to get to that in this episode briefly. So, where it all began. If you guys remember back in the day, episode 1, I just talked about the basics of app development, and we brought up Android app development, obviously. And then episode 2, we talked a little bit about Java versus Kotlin versus all these other opportunities. And I decided to just talk about Java versus Kotlin in this episode. These are two programming languages, and they can be used to do the same exact thing inside of Android development. So which you choose is ultimately up to you. Now, Kotlin's kind of newer. It's kind of like that fresh programming language on the block, and it's pretty well established, so it is popular. It's not like you have to worry about jumping on, trying it out, and then it just disappears the next day. I'd say it's more stable than the latest JavaScript framework. So you can try Kotlin as well, and I intend on doing Kotlin videos on this channel here too. So stay tuned for that, and be sure to smack that sub button. We decided to go with Java since I already have a Java series. And once you know Java and you understand the Android principles, switching to Kotlin is going to be a piece of cake. You just got to learn some of the basics of the Kotlin language. From what I've seen, it ain't too complicated. And then picking up Android with Kotlin, that's going to be easy. So that's that. Now, the thing with apps is that there's multiple points of entry. And these points of entry, the different pages, are known as activities. So we've been working with one activity. And the next section, we're going to be talking about starting a new activity from another one. So we're on the main page. How do we open another page from that page? And you do that with something called an intent. And we're going to get into that. We briefly touched on that in an earlier episode, but I just wanted to bring that word up so you had it registered in your little brain there. Yeah. So that's that. Fragments, these are kind of like, they're kind of like smaller activities, and we're gonna probably get into these soon, but we're gonna start with just getting into activities. It's a more natural flow to understand activities and then move on into fragments. All right, so don't worry about that for now. Just if you are, I just wanted to put that in there. If you are watching this and you're like, oh, why didn't you talk about fragments? That's because we're gonna get to them later, so yeah. Next up, we talked about layouts and also views. Layouts kind of group views together, so you can put views inside of these layouts. You can drag the layout around and all the views inside of them move. The views are like the text boxes and everything like that inside of the layouts. We've been using this one called a constraint layout, which basically you basically anchor different views inside of the layout We haven't gone into the detail of how to do all of that, but we have anchored to the left and right and to the top. And that's just so if you don't do that, it's always going to jump up to the top left at position 0, 0. So when we get into design, we'll probably get into the constraint layout and how to work with it. But for now, just know that layouts are the container and the views go inside of it. So layouts is like a giant box and we're putting views inside of it. Now we can give an ID to these views so we can reference them in code. And we do this by saying find view by ID, pass in r.id. Whatever the ID that we assign it is. So for example, button or button 11 or whatever it might be. Now when we have a button, we can assign a click handler just in the attributes on the right hand side of the page, if that's where your attributes are. And this is defined in the XML, so you can do that as well. And it's really simple. You just put the method name and then inside of the .java file for this activity, you define that method and that becomes your event handler. And when you do that, you're going to have a parameter so that looks something like this. It's going to be of type view, and it's going to have some names such as v. It's the parameter, and that is going to be assigned. It's going to be passed in the button that you click. So you can reference that button using v, so you can disable it, you can change the text, you can manipulate it in every single way you can manipulate a button. That is another way to grab views in addition to the find view by ID, passing in this stuff. So there's two different ways you can do it. The r.id.button, you can use that to grab any of the views. This one, you can only work with the one that the event happened on, such as the button that you clicked. Last, we talked about log.d. That's how we logged stuff to the console. And then we used our toast to make little pop-ups. Now, in the previous episode, we talked about toast, but I didn't really explain that you need to make sure you have the imports, and that might apply for all of these things here because I made it such that when there's an import that is not there, it'll automatically do it for me. We talked about how to do that inside of Android Studio. So if you don't got that, it's really easy. Just go to like, what was it? You go to like you go to like Android preferences, and then you go to general, and then I don't know, look it up, you can figure it out, or watch the entire 25 videos and find where that spot was. So those are the main things. Now what I want to do is I just want to go into either going over some code examples of some of these things just to get some review, make sure you guys got it, maybe some exercises, or we'll just jump into the next section where we're going to talk about creating new activities, doing some more complex stuff, how to pass data from activities, and hopefully all these things start to piece together so that when you're assigned a task of building the next crazy app, you have the tools in your tool belt to do that. Yeah, all these things just kind of seem like random information, like reference material, but it's kind of like I've explained this on my channel before, it's like learning the different Lego pieces. Imagine you're like a 2-year-old and you see like the normal Lego piece and then the flat Lego piece, and you're like, wow, this one can be used to make like houses, and this one can be used to like eat. No, I'm just playing. But the different shapes, those are these, and you can start piecing them together to make bigger projects. It's kind of hard to just jump in and make bigger projects without understanding these concepts. So I do apologize if it's taken such a tremendous length of time just to get through some very, very rudimental stuff. But that's the approach I like to take, because then I feel like you got that solid foundation and you guys can go do stuff on your own versus always having to be stuck in a tutorial purgatory or whatever you want to call it, where you can't manage to create anything besides watching tutorials and following along. Use these tools to make something on your own, come up with some creative ideas. Like I showed you guys in an earlier episode, me and my friend threw together a tic-tac-toe game. All we had to do was piece some of these basic things, and we didn't even know what half these things were called at the time. We just did it because it sounded cool, and when something wasn't working, we just tried something else. We looked stuff up, we got on Stack Overflow, asked different questions, and it kind of progressively got better. You know, at first we just had buttons and they didn't do anything when you clicked them, and then we got them to go disabled, and then we got them to say circle or X, and it just got better and better from there. And then we got bored and we just went back to playing Call of Duty and went on with our lives. But you guys get the point. Try to do it in an exploratory manner. I'm going to stop my rant about now, so thank you guys for watching, And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. We can try to start a discussion. If you've learned anything that's been significantly helpful to you, please leave it in the comments, because that's going to help other people who go into the comments. So if you've had any bugs and you've managed to solve them, leave it in the comments and say what you did or what the issue was. If you had some clarity on some concept you were confused on and you finally figured out how to put it in your brain, put that in the comments, because that's going to help other people. So it should be this community effort to help everybody learn. So thank you, and let's move on to the next episode. Peace out. Hey everybody, welcome. This is going to be your hands-on review of all the primary concepts we've talked about in this series so far. So if you have all of those down, you're a pro, you know exactly what you're doing, then go ahead and skip to the next episode. But if you just think you could use a little bit more practice and you just want to make sure you got all those concepts before starting new stuff, then this is the video for you. But either way, you got to hit subscribe. So even if you're a pro, make sure you smack that sub button. And if you're not a pro, then enjoy this video and then subscribe. All right, so where to begin? Well, we have this activity here, and I never told you this, guys, but you can actually resize these, which is kind of cool. So you can really test the dynamicness of your design. We haven't really gotten to design a whole lot, but just thought I'd throw that out there. So I still have my notes up on the chalkboard, so I'm going to be peeking back there. But the very first thing we did was we talked about activities. And when you start, you have one activity, and in the upcoming section, we're going to be creating new activities and showing how to launch those. So don't worry about that right yet, but just know that where all of the work you're going to be doing is in this activity_main.xml for the design, and that is tied to actual XML, which you can see by slapping this text button down here. Looks a little something like this. Right now it's pretty empty because we don't have a whole lot in our activity. Now the actual code for this is in mainactivity.java, so anything with a .java, that's where the code goes, and we have some old code that we had from earlier. We can go through that soon. When you start, you'll just have this onCreate. That's part of the activity lifecycle. We'll probably get into that. But basically, when this is created, this stuff is executed. All right, so that's the main thing. Now, when you're in the activity, you have layouts. So, for example, this constraint layout. We could also just do like any of these layouts, really. And so when you have a layout, you can put views inside of them. So we'll go to common, we can put a button in here. You can see how small our screen is because our buttons are huge. All right, so that doesn't look right. Why is it doing that? Okay, there we go. Let's add that button in here. Let's try this again. Okay, so we add this button, and the button is indented from the constraint layout, so that indicates that it is part of that constraint layout. Now you hover over this, you got this red exclamation mark here, and it's going to give you some mumbo jumbo. I just clicked it. It'll jump to 0, 0 at runtime. So when you're looking at this and you go to the text, you have this position layout editor absolute X. That's just saying it's going to look in the editor like it's at this position, but when you actually run the application, it's going to jump up to the top left corner. So if we just run this app, we can show that pretty quickly. And we actually have some issues because our source code has old code in it. So I'm just going to comment this out for now. Great. And now we should be able to build this, and hopefully there are no other issues. So again, if we look at the design, the button is positioned here, but it'll jump up to 0, 0. And you can see that when this actually launches, one thing I've learned about doing this series is that, man, this emulator is slow. I either need a new computer or a faster emulator. You can see the button is jumped up to the top left. So that's that. Now to fix that, you can anchor it. So you grab these little circles, anchor it to the left, anchor it to the right. That'll position right in the middle. And you can do it to the top as well. And when you do it to the top, you can see that space right there is 8. You can define that right here. So we could set that to 16 or whatever. Then if we did it again, it defaults to 16. Sorry about that. So that is how you position, but that's really not what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is that there's an ID, and you can see this over in the XML. You can see ID right here.
And you can also see the positioning here as well. So there you go. So we can use that ID throughout our code. For example, inside of the main activity, we can do something like find view by ID and pass in r.id dot, and then whatever the ID of our button is. That is how we get the view in our code. The other way to get our view in our code is with the click handler. So if we are in our design here, we have the onClick. We can make a method to take this. So we already have a method defined. We'll just use that one. Let's take a look at what that's called. It's called handle text. So I'm going to copy that and paste that in the onClick here. So when we click this button, this method will be executed, and we can uncomment it now. We still have to worry a little bit about the syntax because we got some stuff in here, but let's just talk a little bit through this. We'll get rid of these three things. You can work with the button using this v. So v.setEnabled, you can set that to false as an example. That's the example we've been using, and that's a Boolean, which is why it's not in quotes. It's just a Boolean like that. You can also use this toast to make things pop up on the screen. So let's say when you click the button, you just want to say clicked. Here's how you would do something like that. And we can run this, and while that loads, we can also do the logging, which I've told you guys about a couple times. Log.d, and notice when you do these, you're going to have some imports. You can see the imports I'm actively using because they're colored, where these gray ones I'm not currently using. So yeah, make sure you get that. Copy that down. And again, if you want to make it do it automatically, go up here in Preferences. See if I can even find it. Yep. Editor, General, Auto Import, and then should be this one right here. Add unambiguous imports on the fly. Unambiguous meaning there's no question that it's the right one. You can give this a tag such as my log, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And then some message. And that's going to show up in this logcat down here. So we can search for my log. All right, so let's run this. And this will give us an opportunity to see this toast and the log.d in action just as a review. Make sure you get the syntax down. It is a little cumbersome. We'll space this out. And if you're new to Java, notice that spacing it like this is totally fine. It's white space insensitive. So we click the button. It pops up down here saying clicked, and it fades away. And then over here on our log, we have this message, which is this string right here. So other than that, I think we've covered most of pretty much everything, except we did it all in one video. Maybe I could have just did this video and saved you guys like 27 videos. But yeah, the YouTube algorithm, I forgot. Crap. Yeah, got to get that watch time. So just continue watching these episodes, and I think we'll be able to get through a lot of other cool information and start building some cool stuff. So hopefully this is the perfect pace for you guys. Maybe you got a little bit of experience. Maybe you're intermediate, but you don't have tons of experience. And maybe my pace is a little slow, but it also gives you time to really process the information. And I don't want to make an information encyclopedia. I want this to be almost a leisure to, I don't know how to word it, but a leisurely activity. Is that the way to say it? I want you to be able to sit down at your desk and, drink some coffee, eat some spaghetti, and watch some tutorials, code out some stuff, make some fun apps. I don't want this to be like reading the encyclopedia or this isn't supposed to be too crazy. So hopefully I am serving that purpose for you guys. Yeah, and that's it. So see you in the next one. We're going to start some new stuff. Hopefully you guys are excited, and don't quit. Don't be a loser, okay? Just don't. Not today.
Hey, what's going on, you peasants? In this episode, we're going to be talking about activities inside of Android. Now, I know we're pretty far in the series, and we're just now getting to activities. We've talked about them a little bit in the earlier episodes, but now we're focusing on them for the next section of videos. So hopefully we get a pretty good understanding of them. Now, what is an activity? Simple question. It's not those things where you like do stuff. No, it's not those kinds of activities. It's just a screen on your app. So let's say we have a phone, and let's say we have the screen on the phone. We're going to go old school. We still have like a border and a button down here. This here, what shows up here is known as an activity. And we're going to have, oh, that looks terrible. We're going to have a main activity, and that's kind of like your home page, right? So let's say we're in the context of an email application. Well, what kind of stuff would be on our main activity? I imagine we probably have a series of emails on here from people. Right here. Like so. And you know, we might have a little plus button to compose a new email. And we might have a little search. And that is a magnifying glass, if you can't tell. And yeah, this is an activity. Now, when you click something, such as this plus button, this might open a new activity. So now the screen's going to change, and it might look something like, instead of having all these emails here, you might have a box to type in, and you know, your keyboard might pop up with the different letters you can type, and then who you're sending it to, and so forth. So this is a separate activity. So you can see how one activity can send to another activity. Another thing you need to consider is how your app is opened. Because oftentimes, since these are so kind of like their own entities, we have one activity here, we have one activity here, we can send people directly to a specific activity. So you don't always have to go through this home page. So for an example, let's say we have a website and we have an email button. Someone clicks that email, it opens your email app, and it immediately goes to the compose activity, and it just skips the home page altogether. That is an example of how we can access our app in different ways, and the activity that shows up depends on what we're trying to do. All right, so basically you can think of all the activities as serving a specific purpose, and there is a level of separation of concerns. So basically a fancy phrase to say the activities are not dependent on one another. Now, does it always work that way? Maybe not, but ideally they can be separate. So it might look like something like this. We can think about every possibility of different screen as an activity. So we have the home page, we have a compose email, we have a settings, we have a account details, we have, I don't know, I'm out of ideas. Anyways, we have a bunch of different pages, and in theory you should be able to open to any one of these pages directly without having to go through any of the others. But sometimes you will pass information. So for example, let's say you start here and you click the compose button. Well, that's going to open this compose activity. Other times you might be on an email from a specific person. So let's say, you know, we're on an email from John and we click reply. Well, this too might go to that compose page, but now it's going to send a little bit of extra information. That ones and zeros, that represents information. It's like binary, right? So we can pass that extra information. So now in this activity, it automatically fills in John in the to section. So that is how activities work. They can be separate entities, but we can tie them together and pass information from one activity to the other. And the way we initiate a new activity and pass data is we're going to get into all of the different ways of doing that. How to get data from this activity to this activity. And we're going to be using these things called intents. So we'll get into intents and what they are. So we will use an intent to initiate a new activity and pass data to it, but there's various ways of doing it, the passing the data part. So we got a lot of information coming up. hopefully you can start piecing this information together. I know it's a lot of like scattered information, but again, we're trying to learn those Legos, and eventually we'll be able to piece them together and start building cool apps. But you're not gonna be able to do that unless you understand some of these concepts. I want you to leave this series knowing more and not necessarily just having this thing that you built and have no idea how it works. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to stay tuned. In the next episode, we are going to try to get hands-on with these activities, and we're also going to get in a little bit into design, how to make them not look like a giant turd, and how to, yeah, that's pretty much it. We're gonna get into best practices and all that stuff as well. So yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. We'll get through the activities, and then we'll move into fragments and all kinds of other cool stuff. So stay tuned and be sure to subscribe. What's going on, everybody? This episode, we're going to be talking about how to launch a new activity in our app. And right now, we're just starting off with a clean slate. We don't got anything too fancy here. This is the default code. And then in our main activity, we just have literally nothing. So what are we going to do? We're going to put a button here, and we'll also anchor this to the left, right, and the top. And I have this set for 16 dp right here. Now, what I want this to do is, we're not going to worry too much about what the button does, more that it launches an activity. So you can just make something up in your head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is the settings. So if you want to change the settings for something, you can create a button to do that. And then on click, we are going to give it an event handler. So we'll just say launch settings. And we'll copy that to make sure we have the name exactly right when we go into our main activity to deal with that event. So launch settings, and we'll say public void. And then the view passed in is going to be the button. And then all we're going to do in here is launch a new activity. All right, so we got the boilerplate stuff that we need. Now we need to actually launch the activity. So I'm going to write out the code to do that, and we're going to use something called an intent. So it's going to look like this. We're going to say intent, give it a name, and notice the import up here. Make sure you have that. And then we say new intent. Now, if you're new to object-oriented programming, new, that's funny. This is how we instantiate a new object of type intent, and we assign it to this variable I. So this is a constructor, and it's going to take some arguments passed in. So the first is actually what's known as a context instance. So without getting too much into the inheritance hierarchy of all of this, our activity inherits from context. So we can actually say this. So when we say this, we're referring to the current activity, the main activity. And since that is an instance of context, that works. All right, next thing, we are going to have the other activity. So we can give it a name here. We'll just say settings activity, and then we say dot class. All right, so you can see it expanded this here, package context. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so the settings activity is what we're trying to launch. We are going to need to create that. So we will go over to our project, and where we have the main activity, we can right click that folder and say new activity, and then empty activity. We'll call this settings activity and say finish. And notice it says there's a layout here. It's going to be activity underscore settings. So we can work with that later. All right, so this is our new activity. Zoom in just a little bit. All right, cool. And then the only other thing we have to do is inside of our main activity code, we will say, let me go to the next line here. We're going to say start activity, which is a method call, like so. And then we pass in the intent object we just created. So we just say I. There we go. All right, so I think everything is right. Let's just try running it and giving it a go. Now our new activity we just created, this activity settings.xml is currently blank, so there's not going to be much popping up. But in theory, we should be able to click the settings button and then a new blank page will pop up. That's the goal here. So let me scroll over here. Ignore this. This is from an earlier exercise. Give it about some time here. Man, I could go for some mac and cheese. All right, so we click settings. And look at that. It opens a new page, a new blank page. So that is how you create a new page inside of Android. Yeah, the code here is a little confusing. Like, honestly, I don't know the use of all of this here, like why we pass this in. I'm still learning all that too. But this is the code to do it. And then all you have to do is say start activity. Now, if you want to design that intent, if you want to design that activity, just go to the activity_settings.xml, which should be in your layout folder over here. And you should be able to put stuff on this page as well. So I'll put that there. It's not anchored, so it should pop up to the top, but we can show that. And that is how you would design the next page. Oh, mac and cheese, man. Sounds so good right now. Okay, we click settings. It goes to our new activity and our button is there up in the top left. So hopefully that helps with creating activities. What we're going to do now is we're going to dissect the code for this a little bit more, go into some different ways we can pass data to this new activity, and we're actually going to take a little intermission to talk a little bit about design, just because our activities aren't the most pretty thing in the world. We've been anchoring stuff. We haven't really explained any of that. So we're going to go into that as well. So stay tuned and please be sure to subscribe. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about designing our activities. Now, this is designed for the complete beginner. So if you have some experience with design, this might be a little bit of a refresher. All right, so let's take a look at one of our activities. We have the settings, activity_settings.xml, and this is where we can design it. Now, we do have this button on here. It doesn't do literally anything, so I'm just going to delete that by hitting the delete key. Now, so we have these. We're just basically going to go over the user interface, some of the key things you need to know, and so forth. So let's just go complete overview, 1,000 foot. Very first thing is we have these two different views. We have the design, the blueprint, and then the dual view. So if we go to design, it looks like that. Go to blueprint, it looks like that. And then we can go to both. Now, the design is going to show a little bit more of what it looks like. So, for example, we could take let's go with, let's put a button on here. And then what we can do is in our constraints, we could say visibility and we can say invisible. We'll take a look at this. It shows up on the blueprint one, but not on the design one. So the blueprint one's going to give you a little bit more of a blueprint. So yeah, I personally just leave both up, but if for some reason you just want some more space, you can kind of either zoom in or you can just get rid of one of them. So let's get rid of that button. We're not going to need that for right now, but that's the first thing I wanted to show you guys. Next, you can change the orientation of the device. Another thing is you can choose the size of the device right here or what phone you're working with, but you can alternatively take a corner. Maybe if it's going to let me, oh, there it is. There's a little thing here. You can drag this up and it'll tell you about which size goes where. And that way you can do a completely custom size. And that's going to resize everything. You could do that if you want to test for, dynamicness, test to see if it's responsive for different screen sizes. So that is very, very useful. Now you can see it says custom here. So we're no longer on a specific one, we're on custom. So you can always go back if you want. You can select one of these like so. Now the next thing I wanted to show you guys is the component tree. So this is basically a structural representation of how our activity is laid out. Right now we have one layout, and a layout is basically a collection of different views which we can grab from over here. So for example, we can grab a text view,
we can grab a button. And you can see, as I've explained in earlier episodes, these are indented a little bit because they are inside of that constraint layout. So we can select that entire constraint layout, and that's going to contain those two things inside of them. So why is this important exactly? Well, you can think of it as putting these inside of the box. So when you have the box, you can move the box and everything inside of the box moves with it. So if we are working with some other, we'll go into layouts and just add another constraint layout here. We can drag this one around, but if we put some stuff inside of it, such as this button, well, that remains in that position relative to its parent, which is the constraint layout right here. Now you will notice you get some errors here, and we're going to be talking about those. So don't worry about those for right this second. We'll get into the anchoring as well as if you have a string on here, it'll complain about something. So for example, this text view, it should complain about that as well. So watch this. Let me anchor this real quick. You'll get this little exclamation mark saying it should use @string resource. We're going to be talking about that soon as well. So don't worry about that for right now. Let's clean up our page. Let's get rid of that constraint layout, and you can see everything inside of it also goes away. So that's important to know. Now, with the constraint layout, that is a layout that basically positions stuff based on constraints, which is how things are connected to either the parent or other views. So when we put in a text view, it looks like it's in the middle here, but it's actually going to jump up to the top left corner, which is why it says it's going to jump up to 0, 0 right there. So to fix that, we need to anchor it on the left, and we need to anchor it on the top. You could also do the right or bottom, but you have to do one either on the left or right, and you have to do one either on the top or bottom, so that way it knows where to position it. Now, if you zoom in here a little bit, you can notice that there's some space here, and that space is determined by this right here. So right now it says 16 dp, and that's the default spacing. So if you want more default spacing, for example, why does it keep going away? Stop it. All right, let's try this. We'll try 100. Now it's not going to change what's already there. Those have already been established. But if we go add a new button in here and we anchor it, look, it defaults to 100 there. So that's useful. So that is one way you can anchor. You can anchor to the edges of the parent container, but you can also anchor based on another view. So for example, you can lock this position here, and now it's going to always be 100 dp from this text view. That's the alternative way of positioning stuff if you want things to be relative to the other views inside. Now, all of this gets translated to XML, and you can see that inside this text tab here. Look at this. Great. Yeah, it's kind of boring. Now, what I want to do is I want to get rid of these constraints here. Get rid of them here, and get rid of them here. Now when you look in the text, you got this button. You can see it says Layout Editor Absolute X. That just says where it's positioned in the editor. When you actually anchor the thing, it's going to show up differently. So we anchor it, and now you can see Layout Margin Top 100 dp, and we have this constraint top to top of parent. So thankfully we don't have to write this stuff because that would be a huge pain. So that's the basics of designing. Obviously, I'm not teaching you guys how to make it pretty. That's either going to be for another series or for you to experiment with. What I'm trying to do is teach you the functionality here and how everything works. There's all kinds of different views you can use from the palette, so give some of them a try, drag them on here and see how they show up, and learn how to, it doesn't like that. Okay, all right, well, fragments, that's a whole nother beast. We're going to talk about those later. Fragments is basically where you can put it's kind of like a miniature activity that you can put inside of your other activities, and you can reuse them and so forth. So that's the basics. Hopefully it was helpful. Let me know in the comments if it was, or if you'd like more of this stuff. Let's go into the next episode because we're going to get into some more cool things. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe and all. Hopefully that gave you enough information to actually position stuff where you want them. All right, bye. Hey everybody, this episode we're going to be talking about this little issue you get when you're working with a text view. It says something stupid like hard-coded string text view should use @string resource. So what in the world is this, and why am I getting this warning? Now, by the way, this is a warning, so you can execute the code just fine. Now, it's kind of unrelated, I'm sorry guys, but if you take this and you get rid of these anchors, like so, hey, well, you're going to get this error here, but it actually still executes. Just it's going to reposition at runtime, so I don't even know what I'm saying with that. Let's go back to what we had. All right, so I was just basically saying that these are not mandatory to solve, but they are highly recommended. All right, so when you're working with a really simple application, it doesn't really matter. You can just go in here, you can go in here and put some text and say something cool like, I don't know, horse. And that shows up, and it's pretty. And, you can do all kinds of anchoring stuff, and you can make your pretty user interface, impress your friends, go in here and make it, like, cool. Yeah, so that's your button. And, okay, not a button, sorry, that's your text view. Well, we're getting this warning, and basically, whenever you have your text, you want to try to avoid hard-coding text. So this is hard coding because we're typing it in, and if you look at the XML, take a look at this. Horse, right there. We don't want to do that whenever we can. For simple applications, it doesn't really matter because if we want to change it, we can just go in here and change it. No problem. But as we get larger applications, we might want to basically change the text throughout the application. So it depends on how soon you feel it necessary to do this. It might just be best to do this from the very beginning. And I think that is what most guides are going to recommend. So instead of saying horse here, we could basically obtain the value of what should go here from another resource. So basically, we're going to separate out all of our strings to another resource. Now, where is that resource? Well, if you take a look at your project here, and you got your layout here, just go down a little bit more and into the values folder. Strings.xml. Double click that, open it up, take a look, and basically we got a key and then we have a value. So we can go in here and we can manually edit this, or what we could do is we can click open editor and it says edit translations and for all locales, blah blah blah. So this is also really good and recommended for translation use. So basically you can swap out the strings for a different language very easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this little plus button, give it a key. So we'll say, I don't know, my string. No, it looks like we want to go with this, yeah, underscore. Default value is going to say horse. All right, so now we could use this my string instead of horse directly, and then we can go in here and change this value and it will propagate, changing any reference to it. So let's take a look at our activity. Got a little bit much going on here. So we were in the we were in this activity settings.xml. Go back to the design, get rid of this text here, and now select this little box thing which doesn't look like it's anything there, and we can go in here and we can find our text, which was called my string, and it has the value horse. Click OK, and look, it renders the value horse, but we go into the text and there's no reference to horse. All it says is my string. So now check this out, we can go in here, we can create a button, and we're going to change this text, get rid of this, and we'll say the same thing, my string. So now we have two references to this, and what we're going to do is we're going to go change that value. So we'll go to strings.xml, and then we're going to take my string and change it to pig. All right, now taking a look back at our thing, both of these changed to the value pig. Awesome. So that is what that error means and how to fix it. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to stay tuned because we got lots of new content coming for you. All right, See you then. Everyone, welcome. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to change which activity is your main activity, the one that is displayed when you open the app using the icon on the home page of your phone. So let's take a look at our phone here. So if you want to get to the home page, you can slap this little circle down here, and you can actually hold it down and swipe up, and you can see all these different apps in here, and you can see a couple of these have the default icon. So those are the apps I've been tinkering with. And ours is actually right here, my application. And it goes to this activity, the main activity. You can see the looks of it right here. Well, I have this other activity I created, the settings activity. And we can take a look at that. We can take a look at the XML. We can go to the design view, and honestly, I want to clean it up because it's weird. All right, let's just get rid of that stuff and just have a blank activity. So what if we want this one to show up? Well, we have this magical file, the Android manifest, and this basically describes a lot about your application and the activities that are inside of your application. And this stupid yellow highlighting is annoying. But anyways, the thing we want to find in here is, you can see we have our application. It opens here and closes here. Then inside here we have two activities. So this is one and this is another. You can maybe minimize that to see it a little better. So this is the settings activity, and then this is the main activity. So ignoring the name there for a second, we have this category and it says launcher. And then we have this other action here that says main. And these are the two things that determine which one comes first. So if we cut all this and we actually put it inside of this other one here, paste that there, save this, and we're going to run it. In theoretically, maybe it'll open up to that new settings page. So let's take a look at our app, make sure it refreshed and everything. We'll go to the home page, swipe up. We got my application, click that. And there we go, we're on the settings page. There's nothing here because it's an empty activity. So that is how you determine which activity is going to be opened up from the home page. Now later on, I'd like to get into this a little bit more because there's more useful stuff in here. So for example, this determines the icon. You can see that there, and you can find it down here. We have this IC_launcher folder, and you can find our little icon there. So we can manipulate these files and this Android manifest to basically customize the application and make it our own. Yeah, so that's the basics. We're going to go into a lot more. So if we want to talk about the icon and the theme and how to brand our application, we will get into that later on after we discuss activities. For now, we're sticking to the fundamentals. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Hopefully it was helpful. I think it was probably pretty helpful. Hey yo, what's up? This video, we're going to be talking about how to change the title of your activity. So this is what's going to show up at the top of your application when you're running it, and it can be different for each activity. Now, in the previous episode, I told you how to change the main activity. I just want to let you know I changed that back if you're following along. So when we launch this application, it's just going to launch our default main activity. Now, there's a couple things you got to watch out for on this. All right, so the easiest way to do this is to just give it a label. So let's say we want to change our settings activity, and we have to prefix this with Android. Give this a value such as settings. So before I launch this, let's show you what I got so far. Our thing just says my application, and I'm currently on the settings activity. There's nothing on here, but this is what it says. I want that to say settings. So I say Android, label, settings, and I'm inside of the Android manifest, and we're inside of the activity thing. It's just an attribute in here. So we put a space after this attribute, and we put another attribute. So similar to HTML. So let's run this, and we'll see how that works. And while that loads, we can do the same thing for this activity here. We'll say, gotta prefix that again, Android label, and we'll say home. All right, cool. Okay, so scrolling over, we'll go to my application.
and it says settings. So we click settings and it says settings. Awesome. So going back, it still says my application because the current change to home, we haven't actually ran that yet. So before I run this, I want to show you something. And this is the gotcha I was warning you about. When we change that label on the main activity, we actually are going to change the title of our app. So if we swipe up on here, it says my application right there. Watch when I change this label to home. So I'm going to run this now. It's actually going to change the name of the application to home. So if you are working with the activity, the main activity, and you want to change that label, there's another way you can do it that I'm going to show you, and that'll fix the problem. So let's take a look at this. It says home at the top, so that works. But when we take a look at our apps, you can see it says home, which is not what we want. So let's not do that. We're just going to label this learn Android, and we can actually change the name of the activity, the title of it, inside of the Java. On the onCreate, we can say set title, pass in a value of home. Now we can run this and we'll just check to make sure everything works as expected. So we open the app, and it says home right here, so that's good. Close this, swipe up on and see the apps, and you can see it says learn Android. It's a little long, so it's getting cut, but it seems to be working. So that is how you rename your activities, and we showed you how to do it in the XML, and we also showed you how to do it inside of the code. So when you're working with whatever activity is your main activity, so in this situation, we have this one labeled as the main here. We want to do that not in the XML because that's going to change the app name. So you want to do that inside of the code. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to do backwards navigation from an activity. So to illustrate this, let's take a look at my app. So we have this button, it goes to settings, which is really just empty, it doesn't do anything. But you can see there's this arrow here, and that'll bring us back to the home page. It's actually really simple to set up, and you can think about this as this home page being the parent, and when you click the settings, this is a child activity. And then we just say, hey, we want to label this as the parent, and then the arrow just automatically appears. So it's actually really simple, and the way you do this is you go into your Android manifest inside of app manifests, and we'll scroll in here just a little bit, and we have the main activity, and that is defined as the main using this intent filter. The previous episode I taught you how to change which one was the starting activity. Well, we changed it back to this main activity, and we want to set that as the parent. So we actually go into the settings activity, and we add a new label here, and we say Android. Here, I'm going to bring this down to a new line so you can see it nice. Android : parent activity name, and set that equal to .main activity. So I did that once and compiled it, which is why it worked, but if you're following along and you create an activity, that arrow is not going to be there by default unless you set the main activity as the parent using this attribute right here. Alright, so what you can do is you can run it, and I'll prove to you that it works because it's going to be exactly the same as we have it. So our app will launch, we click settings, and then there's the arrow there. So nice and simple, that's how you do that, guys. Thank you for watching, stay tuned for the next episode, and please be sure to subscribe. Hey there, what is going on? In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to pass data from one activity to the next activity. So obviously you can use this if you need to connect to activities, or you need to change the way an activity acts based on the data passed in. So we're going to break this down to the simplest components and just work with two very simple activities. We have the starting activity, the main activity with a button, which opens another blank activity. If you want to see this in action, check out this sick app right here, click settings, and boom, it pops up right here. We've built this throughout this series, so I hope you have some experience with at least launching an activity, but I'll show you the code you'll see that code in this episode as well. So let's go back to the home page here, and let's take a look at our code. So we have the XML here, but now in the code, we just have this launch settings, which is the event handler for when you click that button. And we have the code to launch our other activity, which is right there. So we can actually attach stuff to this intent. So it kind of acts as this, I don't really know, good illustration, but the suitcase that we can put stuff in and then hand the suitcase off to the new activity. And then that new activity can open the suitcase and get all the goodies inside. So before we start that activity, we can add data to this fancy suitcase by saying I.put extras, and then we pass in an ID. So we'll just say cool, and this will be a string, and then we'll put a comma, and then our actual message, which will be like hello. And I think we actually want to use put extra here. So there we go. All right, so you could use put extras. If you say I.put extra, you can look through all the different options here, the different overloads. If you put extras, it actually takes a bundle, which is basically a collection of extra information. So we'll get into that later on. So we'll use put extra to pass one piece of data. We give it a key, and then we give it a value. So that is how we identify the string. If we want to grab this one, we use the key cool. So yeah, very realistic example here, as you guys can tell. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over into the activity that we're starting, the settings activity. So we'll open that, zoom in a little bit, and inside of the onCreate, we can grab access to that data. So all we have to do is say intent I equals get intent. That's going to take the suitcase, and then we can say I.get string extra, and then we pass in the key, which was cool. All right, so then this is going to return that string, so we actually have to do something with it. We can just assign it to a string. We'll just say string message and assign it this right here. All right, so this message will now contain the value hello, which is the value associated with that key there. So if you want to see that, we could put a view on the activity to display it. So let's try that. We will go into the XML for this. So activity settings, and we're going to drag in a text view. We'll just plop it right here. And we'll just center it in the very middle of our application, like so. And then this is going to have an ID of just text view. So inside of our Java code, we can say find view by ID r.id.text view, and then we can say dot set text. And to get this to work, we have to cast this to a text view. So we'll say type of text view, and we need to put parentheses around all of that before we put the dot here. Set text. Now we should be able to put in a value, and we'll put in that message like so. All right, it doesn't look like we have any errors, but you know, there's a high chance we do. So we'll just run it and see if everything works. All right, so run this app, and right now we're just using the hard-coded value. So taking a look at Mainactivity, you can see we're just using this hard-coded value, but you could also get this value from one of the views on the Mainactivity, and we'll show you guys that as well. So let this cycle here. It just finished. It's going to refresh, and we should be able to check to see if it works. All right, so we hit settings, and it says hello. Wow, it actually worked. So we did everything right. Now I want to get this message from another view.
So what we're going to do is we are going to go into the main activity XML, and we're going to put in let's go to text, and we'll just use plain text here. Sure, we'll just let's put it above the settings. So we'll put name up here, anchor that to the top. Sorry, my computer's a little slow here. All right, we'll anchor these to the side, and then we'll anchor settings to name right here. Beautiful. This is going to have an ID of edit text. So we will get a reference to that. We'll say string message is equal to find view by ID r.id edit text dot get text. And now again, we're going to have to do that weird casting thing. So we'll just say this is for some reason I always forget the class name. So this is an edit text. All right, so edit text, and then we'll put the entire call in parentheses like so. And then instead of passing hello, we just pass in message. So let's run this. Now just while that, okay, we got an issue. Cannot resolve method. What? Oh, string is capitalized. So we have to make sure that is the right type. And then we have to say toString. Sorry, there's a lot here. So we get the view, then we get the text of it, and that's not quite string type, so we have to say toString in order for us to store it in a string variable, and then we pass it in here. So that should be everything. And while that loads, let me just go through this all. We get the message, we add it to the suitcase using put extra, we assign it a key of cool or a name, whatever you want to call it, and then we start the activity. And then in the other activity, the settings activity, we get that intent, we take the suitcase, and we open the suitcase and get the message with the name cool. We assign it to a variable message, and we set that to the text of a view on this activity's screen. So it's a lot going on here, but let's just try it out. We'll type in, we'll just go with Caleb, very creative, settings, and it says Caleb. Now, obviously the button saying settings is a little silly, like why would you need to pass data from this to the next activity? It's just an example. Another example is you might be making an email application and you might hit reply, and the data you pass might be the person you're sending the email to, their email address, so then it just automatically fills the to field. That's another more useful example. But yeah, this can be applied to lots of different things. So thank you guys. Hopefully that was helpful. It is a lot just to do that very simple thing, but hopefully you can build upon this to create really awesome applications and make millions of dollars.
Okay, what is going on? So this whole series we've been talking about how to create stuff inside of Android Studio. This video is special because we're going to be talking about how to destroy stuff. I usually don't do this stuff because usually it's pretty simple to figure out, but just if you need a little bit of assistance, we're going to be talking about how to remove an activity from Android Studio and just be sure that we get all of the stuff floating around that references it. So why exactly? Well, because I have this settings activity and I decided I want to destroy it. I want to instead create a contact activity. So you have two options. One, you can rename stuff and change references and make sure everything could be changed to this new contact activity, or you could just delete the settings activity and start fresh. I generally prefer starting fresh if things are pretty easy to get started, and creating a new activity of this complexity is really not going to be really too difficult. So what are we going to do? Well, if you see, we have the settings activity over here in the Java folder. You can right click this and you can find usages, and this is going to show where this activity is referenced in your code. So you can see it is referenced inside of the main activity, inside of a method. So what we can do is we can basically go through these references, and you can double click it, the most expanded one, it'll show up here, and this will reference that activity, so you can change this code here. So get rid of that. You could also get rid of this method altogether if you want this event handler to not do anything. So we'll get rid of that. That was a button handler on the main activity. So that's one thing, and now you can see it says invalid down here, so that's cool. So now next up we have in the layout, let's double click this. This is in the settings activity.xml, and it references it inside of here, but we're actually not going to need this XML file at all. So what we can do is we can just delete that, and that's going to be right here. So we're going to right click this and delete. Delete that. The other usage is not expanded right here. Double click this, and this is inside of the Android manifest. So there's this activity reference right here, and that refers to the settings activity. Make sure you're not deleting the main activity. You can check to see where it ends by looking for the / and then the greater than sign. Or you might also see something like this here, and then a closing tag like this. In this situation, you would close the entire section. So do that there. So that gets rid of the reference in the Android manifest, which is basically the file that keeps track of all of your activities. So then at this point, you should be good to go into the actual Java file, the settings activity, and delete this. All right. And lastly, you might see some reference to this inside of this values folder, which is inside of this res. So go into the values and open strings. You might see a reference here, so you could delete it there. So for example, we have this main2 activity one here, but I'm not seeing one for the settings activity, so we're fine. We don't have to delete anything. So to conclude, what all did we do? We deleted it from the Android manifest, we deleted the Java file, and we deleted the XML file, and we deleted any code referencing the activity. Specifically, we had some code that initialized that activity, so we got rid of that. And optionally, or in this case it wasn't required, but you could go into the strings and make sure there's nothing here as well. So pretty simple video, but just thought I would cover that because if you've been following along, I don't want to jump into the next episode and we have a completely different setup and I didn't explain anything on how to get there. So now you know how to delete an activity, pretty simple. So stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to start creating again. See you then. Hello everybody, welcome back. In this episode we are going to start fresh. So in the previous episode we talked about how to delete different activities and do all this different stuff. But now I just want to start a new project. I want to talk about something new. So to do this, you go to File, New Project. And what I want to do is I want to show you guys that we can actually very easily create a tabbed system by using this bottom navigation activity. So if you're looking for a way to basically scaffold out an application without having to do a whole lot or generate an application, you can do that this way just by clicking one of these different options. So we'll click Next. And we'll give this a name, call it YouTube. And we're going to use Java. And now for the API, you can choose a newer API if you want some of the newer stuff. But I would say API 19 is fine. That's going to cover 95% of devices. And we're not going to be using too much of the new API stuff. So for now, we'll go with 19, but you might want to go with a higher version. So that's up to you. So then we'll click Finish. And you can just say goodbye to our old application. Yay. That's the easiest way to clean up a project is just get rid of it. All right, so now we got this new application. And what I want to do is, well, first let's open the project. And we'll go into the app, into the source, and then into the main, and then the Java. Oh man, come on, really? Why are you doing this to me? All right, go into, that's better. All right, so we'll go into Java. And then the main activity, which opened automatically. My computer's just so slow that it just took a couple of patient minutes there. All right, so this is the XML, and we're in the text, so we can go to the Design tab here to see what it looks like. and it's looking pretty good. You can see we have a home, a dashboard, and notifications. So we already built out this really cool application. We didn't even have to do anything. And you'll notice a ton of the apps on the App Store have this similar style. They'll just have some buttons at the bottom. I'm guessing a lot of the developers are just setting up this default app, charging tons of money for, quote, custom apps, and then they just change a couple of things, and boom, they have a new application. But in reality, they're just using one of the default options. So let's run this thing and just see if it looks anything like this, if it looks pretty good. We can also look in here and see how it scales by dragging this here. And it seems to be very dynamic. We can also check the, switch the orientation here. We go landscape mode and see how it looks there. Yeah, so this is a very common style. Let's take a look. Oh, that's our old application. We can X out of that. Let's take a look at the app and see how it looks. Give it about, I don't know, 30 hours. All right, it's working its way up. Oh, okay, this is the home fragment. All right, awesome. So this is using fragments, and we're going to get into that soon. We've been talking about activities up to this point, and activities are essentially the entire page, but it looks like each one of these tabs shows a new fragment, which you can kind of think of as a fragment of an activity or a piece of an activity that you can reuse. So maybe this part of the screen is a fragment, and if you want to see what this looks like in the visual editor, you can go over here and you can see inside of the component tree we have this nav host fragment, which takes up this portion of the screen, whatever's inside of the blue there. So cool, and you can see those fragments over in the layouts. We have the fragment dashboard, the fragment home, and the fragment notifications, and you can go inside of these to see what they look like, which in this case they really don't have anything at all. So yeah, but we'll get into all the fragments and stuff pretty soon. I just wanted to show you guys how to create a tabbed system. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the next episode, we're going to start working with this application and building some stuff out. And we're going to continue our discussion on activities and passing data between them. But pretty soon we'll transition into fragments because we need to learn about those as well. So thanks, stay tuned, and be sure to subscribe. What's going on, everyone? In this episode, we're going to be talking about some of these different options on this text category of the palette. Now, you can just get in any activity. There's no prerequisite content. You can just drag some stuff to the screen and start playing around with it. I do have here a plain text that I drag to the screen, or drug, however you would say that. I don't know. And it's cool. It works. It does its job. But one of the things I wanted was to be able to type and it would go down to the next line as if you're writing a larger message or an email or something. And I actually found there's this option here, multi-line text. So you can drag that to the screen. You can anchor that real quick. And it seems to do the trick pretty well. But is there really anything different between these two? Because if you look down here on the component tree, you can see that they're actually both of type edit text. So what is going on here? Why do we have all these options if they're both edit text? And how do you differentiate the two? Well, it actually comes down to this input type attribute. And you can see there's a bunch of different options on here. One of which is this. In this case, we just have this text person name here, which when you check that, it checks text and text email address and text short message. So in other words, we can combine various selections here to customize the input. So let's take a look at this one. When we go to this one and we go to input type, we have text multi-line. So that allows it to work across multiple lines. So the difference between a lot of these text options on this palette is that we just have different customizations for the type, for the input type. Now, this isn't the case for everything. For example, we have one of these is the multi-autocomplete text view, as well as the autocomplete text view. So we can drag one of these to the screen, and I will anchor this to the bottom. Cool. Now let's run this and just take a look at what we get. And you can see over here on the left, the autocomplete text view is actually a different type. So that is not just a customization of the plain text. It's its own entity. So taking a look at our application, we can try out these new ways of typing. So this one, we can type in some stuff here. And look at that. It goes down to the next line. That's different than this one where it just scrolls forever. So if you want to get rid of the keyboard, you can hit this little arrow down here at the bottom. And then we have the autocomplete text view, which works pretty much the same exact way. So you can put stuff in here and you can fill up the page. Now, this one also does that though, because I can go in here and autofill this. So I'm not entirely sure the value of this autocomplete text view because it seems that this one does it by default. And maybe that's something that's dependent on the Android operating system or the phone you're on. I'm not entirely sure. But just so you know, that is a thing that exists. So those are some of the different things you can do to customize the text inputs. So when we want to create a way to create a message, what you can do is you can go format this thing to fill up more of the screen, and then it'll scroll down to the next line. And my only request for you guys is I want you to autofill one of these things, and I want you to copy and paste the message as a comment just to see the wild things that pop up. And make sure you don't put any context. Just post it in there. That way YouTube looks at it and is like, the algorithm's totally confused with the conversations going on in the comment section. So that'll be fun. So do that and start playing around with some of these different options in the palette and look through the different options in the input type. For example, there's password. So it looks like there's a search, which is nice. Password didn't show up. So let's see what password has selected. If we drag password in here, it has, okay, text password. So yeah, that's how you do that. So if you want the password, you can select that one. And there's all kinds of other options on here. So you can get exactly what you need. So I know it's kind of simple, but just wanted to share that with you guys and check out the next episode. See ya. Hello everyone. In this episode, we're going to get a little bit more practice with activities, passing data between them, and making them dynamic. Now, we're going to start fresh with a new project. So, open Android Studio and start a new Android Studio project. And we're just going to go with an empty activity. And we're going to call this whatever you want. We'll just call it like activity practice. And we're going to go with Java. But, I mean, if you're using Kotlin, by all means, whatever. Okay, looks like I already have an activity practice. So, it was named Activity Practice 2, but yours is probably just activity practice, and that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to make an activity that is separate from, remember, like the whole idea is to keep things separate. So we have the main activity, which is like the home page, and then we have a new activity, which acts as its own module, sort of. So we can just pass data to it, and it will work. So imagine if you're working with an email application, you compose an email, and that'll work if you reply to John, if you reply to Sally, or you reply to someone else. And you don't have to have a new activity for each one of those options. You just have one, and then you kind of generalize it so that you can take input such as who you're sending the email to. So that's just kind of like a silly example, but we're going to basically try to produce that same concept here right now. So if you wanted to have a list of emails, you could really easily do that with a recycler view, and you can get that by clicking that little arrow there. But it's not quite as simple as just dragging and dropping and then boom, you're done. There's a little bit more work to it, so we're going to save that for another episode because that's really not the focus of this episode, and that'll take some time to set up and explain. So we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to work with some buttons. So we'll drag a couple buttons in here, and we'll zoom in here. And you can lock these to the left and to the top, just so they're not just all in one spot. Again, I'm not working on design here. I'm just trying to get some functionality going. So what are these buttons representing? Well, imagine we have a list of emails, and we have the option to reply to the first one, reply to the second one, reply to the third one, and so forth. So each one is like a reply. Now, you can generalize this a little bit and think, hey, this might work for an application where you can respond to support tickets or respond to instant messages. It doesn't have to be email. It's just that concept here. So if you remember from an earlier episode, we have this on-click handler. So click one of these buttons and we have this on-click. We can just say something like compose message. And we're going to create that method because you can see it's red now. It doesn't like that. So we're going to go into the mainactivity.java and we're going to create that method. So we'll say public void compose message. And it's going to take the argument, which is the button that you clicked. So that's of type view. V is the name. All right. So also, I'm stupid and I put this in the wrong spot. So make sure this goes inside of the class there. Beautiful. All right. So here is where we would handle that button click. And we can actually set that to the on click for all of these. And we're going to make sure that this works. So it looks like it's working. So we'll do that for all of these. Go to the on click and compose message. So regardless of which button we click, it's going to work. So now we can change the text on these. Let's say the first one is reply to John. This one is someone else. I feel like that's a better spelling. There we go. So reply to John, reply to Sally, reply to Amy. Now, regardless of which one you click, you want to do the same thing. You just want it to be a little bit different. So let's create that new activity. And to do that, you go into where your main activity is, right click that folder and say new activity. And we're going to go with an empty activity. And we'll just call this compose message activity. And that will generate the file here as well as the XML, which will be named activity_compose_message.xml. And it looks exactly like the one we had, but now we have to put a little bit of stuff on here as well. So we will start with a text view, which is just going to basically imagine this being who we're sending the message to. So that's what we're going to dynamically change. And then we're going to actually have a multi-line text here. So we'll go multi-line text, drag that in here, anchor this here and to the left. And then lastly, we can have a send button. So we might want to give this a little bit more space. So you can drag down the corner here. And then we can have a button, which we'll just put below it. Looking good. Oh yeah, man. Very nice. Okay, so what we can do is we can run this just to confirm that the buttons are working and that it's launching this new activity. And then we can start working with the data to change what shows up here and so forth. So give this some time to run and we will check out the application, make sure everything is working. Throw this in full screen and scroll over. All right, so we replied to John. Kind of an important part I forgot. Duh. We need to actually synchronize that when you click, we launch this new activity. I don't know how I managed to forget that, but in the compose message, we have to start with an intent, which is how you launch a new activity. So we'll call it I and say new intent. It's going to take two arguments. The first one is going to be this, so the instance of the main activity, and then compose message activity dot class. Next, we're going to say start activity, and we're going to pass in I, the intent. So that should make it launch the new activity. We're not doing any data passing, but at least it should actually do something. So we'll let this refresh, click those buttons, and make sure I'm not being stupid this time. So click that button, and it works. If you want to go back, you can click the little arrow here to go back. Awesome. And you see all three of them work, so we are in business. Now we have to talk about how to actually pass data between the two. So what are we going to do? We're going to get the person's name, so we'll create a string. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that name and we're going to pass it with the activity or with the intent. So we'll say I dot put
put extra. We'll give this the name,
comma, and then the actual value,
which is going to be stored in this variable here. So now we have to get this value.
And to do this, we just say v.getText. This isn't an option on this object, so we actually need to cast this to an edit text instead of just a view, and then pass this whole thing in parentheses before the dot. There we go. So that is how we get the name. Great. Now we can access that inside of the other activity. So let's go over here to compose message activity, and inside of here we can say get intent. That's going to return an intent, so we'll just assign it to a variable called I, and then we'll say string name is equal to I dot get string extra, and pass in that key, which is name. So now we should get whatever that name is here. And now what we can do is we can dynamically update this value here, so to say that we're sending a message to whoever it might be. So let's do that. Let's get that thing's ID. We'll go into the the activity main here. Or no, sorry, this one. And grab that text view. So the ID is just text view, and we need to set the text attribute. So we'll go in here, and we will say find view by ID, r.id text view, set text. Same thing here, we just need to do the casting, so we'll cast this to a text view, and then put everything in parentheses before the dot for the set text. What are we going to set it to? We're going to set it to name. All right, we're not getting any errors on this page, so that all looks good, but in the mainactivity.java, it looks like we have an error. So let's take a look and see what is going on. I'm not seeing anything, so maybe it's just a little confused. Let's run this and see if it compiles. Okay, cannot find symbol class edit text. Okay, yeah, that's just because we need to capitalize it. The class name has a capital. So let's run this now. Editable, cannot be converted to a string. Okay, so to fix that, all we have to do is say toString. Pretty simple. Run that. Now let's give this a try. So we reply to John, and it crashes. Oh yeah. All right, let's go into the run, see what happened here. Not getting anything, so let's just try this again. See what's going on. Reply to John. Weird. All right, here we get an exception, so we can look at it. Could not execute method for Android on click. So the actual problem is fairly simple. I am doing an incorrect cast here. We're making it in edit text, but it's actually a button. So we just need to convert this to a button instead. All right, let's go over to the app. Reply to John. And there we go. Reply to John shows up here. We can type in our message. And then we can turn this button into a submit button and send that message off somewhere else. So that is the basics of working with activities. The beautiful thing here though is that this compose message activity will allow us to send a message to any of these people. I mean, in theory, it doesn't actually work right now, but you know, we could make this functionality work by programming this button right here, which would be very similar to how you would do it with clicking these buttons. You would just create a method for the on-click event and so forth. So there you go, guys. That's a little bit more practice working with activities. Hopefully that was helpful for you. And be sure to stay tuned in the next episode because there's actually a potential issue with our application that we're going to try and fix. So thank you, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, it is a new day here. I'm getting a bright and early start here on the tutorials for the day. And let me just tell you guys, I'm a little salty because I posted a video and shared it with you guys on social media and I immediately got like 3 dislikes. Psh, you guys are ingrateful. Alright, here's what, I'm still going to produce amazing content for the few of you out there that really care. So what are we going to be doing today? We're going to be talking about dealing with nulls in the context of a new activity. So first video of the day might be a little rusty, but I think I got this. All right, so here we have an intent, and part of this intent is the data that we pass to it. So if we take a look at our main activity right here, what we do is we say i.putExtra. So we attach this name to the intent. So I gave the illustration in previous episode. The intent is kind of like this suitcase we pass along to the new activity, and inside of that suitcase we have one thing with the name and the value, which comes from the value of this button here, which I can show you that, guys. But some of the problems here is that sometimes you'll pass something to an activity and sometimes you won't. So what are you supposed to do when it's null? How do you deal with that? But just so you guys can see what this looks like, we have this reply to John. We click it and it says reply to John. Now this button down here, I actually added that, so if you've been following along, don't worry about that. Alright, but watch this. Let's say instead of assigning this to name, we just comment this out. Let's say we don't pass that in. Now when we run this, what's going to happen? Because inside of our compose message activity, we are getting that value here. So this is going to be null. So yeah, that's bad. We don't want to do that, but we're going to see what happens. So we reply to John, and it's empty. Now I'm going to set a breakpoint here so we can just confirm this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this little bug button up here. And the way this will work is it'll run to this point when we click that button. So over here we have to click that button and that breakpoint will be hit. So reply to John. This is hit. Check out the value of name. It's evaluating, and it's null. So it's not the value null, it's not a quoted word null. Null actually means no value. So when we're setting the text here, we're setting the text to null. We're not getting an exception, so that's interesting. It works, but we're not actually showing any value there. Sometimes we're going to want to do things conditionally though, so I'm going to be teaching you guys how to check for nulls. So very first thing we do is we say if, and we can put the value in the expression here, and I'm going to stop debugging. So we say if name is null, this is a keyword here, that's how you check, then we can do something. So we would say, let's say if it's null, we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're going to display the value. So we'll take this, cut it, and paste it right here. So if it's null, we could put something else. So let's just say, we'll just say composing message. So we'll paste this in here, and instead of set text name, we'll just say composing message. And this will allow us to see how this works. And then what you can do is you can build upon this system to do more complex things based on if the value is null or not. So in this situation, it's null, and it just says composing message instead of being blank, or instead of saying writing a message to John. So that's how that works. Now, this has its limitations. So if we go back, obviously we don't want it to just say composing message. We want it to say composing a message to John because we clicked on John. But what if we wanted this fourth button down here that just said compose a message, and we didn't have a name there, and we wanted it to say something different? And maybe instead of having just the words composing message, what if we actually had a different view there, an edit text where we could type in the value? So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. One, you could generate that view programmatically and position that on the screen. That works. It might be a little bit complicated. And there's also specific views for swapping views, which you can look those up as well. But there's actually a third way, which seems a little brute force, but it's actually the easiest, is just to toggle the visibility of different views based on whether a value is null or not. So what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to make it such that when you click this bottom button, it says, it gives you the option to type in someone's name, and when you click one of these buttons, it says that person's name already. So that's what we're going to be doing. So check out the next episode, and yeah, it should be pretty fun. So see you then.